Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
What?
Many of you may have heard that Mr. Brooks resigned, and that we wish him health, wealth, and happiness for the future. And tonight, Mr. Fox will sit in as a voting member. And for the Greenwich Country Day, where Mr. Macri sat for Mr. Levy last time, he will sit again. And Mr. Levy is up on all the news and events and what have you, so he will sit as a member as well. Okay, item number 1, extension of time, 27 Grimes Road.
This is the same plan that was presented in 2009 and 2012, and hopefully you'll see your way clear to extend it one more time, and he's promised me that this time he's going forward. The advantage is that the flood zone has moved inward, but nowhere near as close to that, well, not much farther than the original. It's actually lower than we expected, so what we can do now is take advantage of the new regulation regarding grade plane and reduce the amount of fill. Otherwise, the house stays the same.
Comments? Anybody?
You know, I know you know this, but you know that if the
Can you
federal
turn
law,
these?
if the federal law changes before they, federal,
We'll,
know that
we'll comply with the regulations of the flood zone as it
this way
applies.
to make sure that,
Yes, in this case, it's to our advantage.
yeah, but you never know.
I know.
So we just wanted to put it out there.
Any comments from the public?
What kind of an extension are you looking for?
To the maximum extent possible, but he promised me that it will be very soon.
Motion, please.
I would move the extension to the maximum possible.
According to
under state
law.
law.
Under,
you.
that's the Public Act 11-5.
Thank you.
That would be 14 years from the date the site plan was approved.
Second? Second?
Second.
Second?
You got it down here.
So you can announce it.
Fred's going to do it. Oh,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. So now people have to second.
269 Palmer Hill Road, final subdivision.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Chip Haslam from Johnson, Haslam, and Hogeman for the applicant. This is I think this property you're all familiar with, going up Palmer Hill Road. It was previously occupied by an old estate, Buena Vista. It's on a little under 10 acres of property, and we propose to subdivide the property into 6 lots, whereas under the regulations, even with the 15% set aside, we could probably do 8. So it's a relatively straightforward, we believe, and conventional subdivision application. We did meet with the Historic District Commission and the Greenwich Historical Society before we tore down the building. We had them tour the building, and they concurred that it was nothing that we could save. We've also went to inland wetlands and received approvals from wetlands, final approvals on some of the lots, and conceptual and others. We'll have to return to inland wetlands for, I believe it's 1, 2, and 3. In addition, even though it's under 10 acres, we met with the Conservation Commission earlier this month, and I know that they had some recommendations that were contained in your packet as to how we might improve the subdivision plan overall. With me tonight is Tony DeAndrea, the engineer in the project, and Bill Kenny, who's our soil scientist and landscape architect. And I'll have Tony just describe briefly his plan, and then we'll go over the points that the Conservation Commission made and the questions that I think you had in your briefing session as of yesterday. So, Tony?
I'll start by saying that this is a very good plan. Not just a good plan, a very good
Nothing
plan.
less from you.
And the reason it's a good plan is that, as Mr. Haslam pointed out, we only have 6 lots, and we have much more room than we could have. We did not squeeze the lots in. We made them ample in size to the point that they all have excess land, much more than the 1 acre required. We've also developed some flexibility into the plan, whereas while we showed the opportunity to use Palmer Hill Road as an entrance using the existing driveway, it's been suggested that it'd be better for the development and a number of people in the private association to have lot number 2 also front on Hillcrest Lane. The key point to the design that we started with and we ended with was that we wanted to make sure that everything we did in the way of drainage was more than required, because we were very cognizant from the outset that there was a known and historic problem at the intersection of Palmer Hill Road and what's known as Apple Tree Lane, which is the property to the west. And whereas the water that flows westerly from the Hillcrest Park development ultimately ends up in Cider Mill Brook, there's a major restriction under Palmer Hill Road. So after several preliminary meetings with Mr. Scott Marucci from our engineering department, we agreed that we would do everything possible to prevent any excess water running from this property to the west. So what we did was we designed into the plan a very extensive series of on-site collection system routed through a bioretention basin for renovation and purification, and then utilizing what we found to be extremely deep gravel soils in the northwest corner, we decided to place a detention basin in that area. And that basin was designed for a 50-year storm, which is in excess of what's required normally for the 25. We also provided for an extra foot of freeboard below the top of the berm to allow for other unforeseen developments, such as additional construction of larger homes, perhaps, or of a pool. Maybe one of the lots could, in fact, contain a tennis court. So we built in excess capacity. We accounted for future development. And in the process, we also identified, as you may have seen on our...
Oh, no, go ahead. Before you flipped it, I was going to just ask you to explain what is the light.
I will. I'm going to get to that, because I don't want you to be misinformed. Where was I?
Sorry.
You're turning the page.
Huh? Yeah, but there was something more to that. Okay. They did that on purpose. I know they do. Anyway.
Thank you for.
Now, as a segue to that, I wanted to explain what this panel was. In demonstration for the Wetlands Agency, we decided to show that after the development of the property, oh, I know what I was going to tell you. After the development of the property is, pretty much complete, even though some of the areas would be manipulated to create the plan, all of this area in 3 shades of green would basically be open. But in addition to that, which I didn't highlight, was all the other areas behind lots 5 and 6, and the areas around, the homes. So there's a lot of open area that will be there after development. And as you can see, this is a 2-acre lot. This is an 1.5 acres. They're all oversized. So this was just an indication to say, guys, at the end of the day, look at how nice this plan is. It's a conventional subdivision, and we have a tremendous amount of open space at the end of the day.
Is there any kind of development or grading going on in what you call the open space? Or is it being left as is?
Mr. Maitland, basically what this line was intended to show was that this was the limit of development in one way or another. Some of these areas are graded with just a few inches or, manipulation. After you grub the trees out, there's going to be some manipulation. So we left it white. In one location on lot number 3, it's defined as the edge of the wall. But the idea is that this would be generally untouched, but still green at the end. Now, what we did also to document what the capacity of the system is that on each of the lots, in our discussions with DPW from the beginning, we said we recognize that there might be changes. While these homes are representative homes that have been built by this owner, we've had to modify them, shape them a little bit differently so that they would fit for zoning and look better on the site. But they may change, of course. So in our development plans, on the lid plans, if you will, we've indicated areas of each of the structures and all the appurtenances. So I'm going to show you just an example on one. on lot number 3, which just happens to be on this sheet, we've indicated that the roof area that we're going to collect in the drainage system is almost 3,600 square feet. The patio is another 900 square feet, and the driveway is about 2,300 square feet. So when we go back into final design, which we will have to do, take each site plan, develop a very detailed development plan, which will go through the review of P&Z staff and then ultimately down to DPW. We may have a house that's only 2,500 square feet on the footprint. We may have a pool in the back, and so we're compensated. So at the end of the day, we know how much impervious area we can equate. It may be in the final analysis that we have to add another gallery or increase the size of the bioretention basin. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, we designed for a 50-year storm, and we left 1.5 feet of freeboard in the detention basin. So it was very unlikely that we're going to have to be concerned about any minor increases.
Another question is, when you look at your development plans, this is a conceptual idea, but many of the sites are, the grading goes from one site to the next site. There's
Yes, sir.
no stopping of the grading at
Correct.
property lines, number one. Number two, the same thing with your drainage facilities, like the one that
Yes.
you were just looking at, as it drains across, it goes across. So I guess it comes down to, is this going to be built in one phase?
Right.
This is,
The answer is no, it's not going to be built in one phase because the market may not demand that. So what the first phase is, installation of the drainage system, the interim acetylene basin, which would double as the bioretention basin, and of course the detention basin.
so you will initially install all the site utilities.
We have to work this out.
Grading will you be doing during that initial phase also, or will you?
I don't know if I'm prepared to answer that question fully right now, but the idea is that if you look at where the drainage systems are, they're not, the main conveyance systems are not directly under the homes, so we have collection systems around the homes and then out to the trunk lines, if you will, to get to the bioretention basin, then the detention basin. So that detention basin, basically working from northwest, south, and east for the trunk lines, those will be in. Once those are in and they're finalized in design, because we're going to proceed with more detailed designs once we get through this approval stage. And then we'll finalize the location of all the structures. They'll be built. We'll superimpose the final drainage easements, and they'll all be in place before anything can be conveyed out.
Okay, so
But it's a phased job.
That has to all be on the subdivision map.
I think we are going to commit to the to the preparation of the final easement maps prior to the conveyance of of the first home. That's the idea. We could create the easements, but they may be slightly changed, that's all. We find that it's cumbersome to do them ahead of time if not completely necessary.
Well, I think DPW was asking for it too, so
Because they don't fully understand construction sometimes.
anyway. So, but what I'm concerned about is that if for whatever the reason is that you elect to build this one first, stop right there.
Yeah.
You've got to go all the way across, plus the grading for that site. It goes, I mean, it's been designed as if it's going to be built in one phase.
Here's the way it's really going to work. Based on our discussions with our client, even as late as this afternoon, he fully expects to do 2 homes at a time. That's the intention right now. We've also agreed or suggested that you'd work from the north to the south because at the end of the day, you don't want to keep driving past the homes you just constructed to build the last one. Everything is concentrated in the north and the west, so we'll build our drainage from the bottom up. We'll build our houses from the north to the south, and then everything will fall into place. We can create the easements before you sign the record sheet, but keep in mind they may modify. And of course, everything has to be done before the first conveyance of any home is completed.
Do you also, I don't remember whether Conservation asked for it or not, maybe they didn't, but is there like an overall scheme for planting for this site due to the,
We have that with Mr. Bill Kenny, yes, sir.
okay, so we'll
But
hear about
has
it.
an individual lot layout or planting plan been done? No. But the general idea has been suggested, especially around the areas of the wetlands.
Has
Well,
this gone to, have you discussed it with
Conservation raised a couple of the trees that are particularly large caliber.
Right.
But besides the Norwegian spruce that is the largest caliber, which is what she mentions,
Right.
there's, excuse me?
And the Japanese maple.
And the Japanese maple, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. There are some other spruces that are also fairly substantial. Just stopping for a sec on that. On that, the stone wall is in the town right-of-way, correct?
Right now, the stone wall that you must be referring to is the one along Palmer Hill Road.
Right.
And it's not in the town right away, it's actually on our property, but it's along the town right away, yes.
So that's being retained, correct?
We're going to retain most of it and probably replace a piece of it after we reorient the home on lot number 2 to the Hillcrest Lane side. Some of it will be necessarily removed to accommodate the entrance into lot number 1.
Okay, now
You can see that here. What we've done is,
yes,
one advantage we have on this also, which, while you mentioned that, is that
number 6, right?
you'll see that
To that
the
again.
wall is well removed from the edge of the pavement. So we actually need only a very narrow a cut into the wall, because you got ample sight distance of more than 400 feet along Palmer Hill.
Where you said you were going to replace some of it, I didn't have the plans with me when I looked at it, so I'm a little turned around here. Down there where you're making the new driveway cut
Here,
west of the old drive, well, yes, but for the second lot's going to now front on Hillcrest.
yes, so we're going to replace, or actually perhaps, depending on what it is.
Because that's so,
I'm going to make that suggestion. You're either going to leave the opening and close it off with landscaping so you have the sense that it was still there,
yeah.
okay? Or we could close it up along the street,
Because
if it's an
it's so
aesthetic.
attractive, it's
Yeah,
got those
absolutely.
little
Large
houses
stones.
on it, and,
Yep.
okay, so, and most of the trees that are there are going to stay in place along with the
Yes.
the stone wall.
Yes, you'll see that because of the way the driveway is configured on lot number 1, and because of the way the stone wall is far removed from the edge of the pavement, we have the ability to get out within 10 feet of Palmer Hill and not be within any conflict of the trees. And we prepared a site distance plan for that. So in direct response to your question, we can save the trees and save the wall and still retain our sight lines.
Okay, then coming down to Hillcrest.
Down to Hillcrest, there's a...
Same question.
Yeah.
You've got to make, now you're going to have to make 5, no, you're going to make 5 driveway openings.
Yes, that's
there.
correct.
And so you're going to lose some of those large trees there,
Some,
but you're going to keep the existing trees as long as they don't interfere with the driveways?
correct. And we've discussed that also. And another thing you'll notice when you look at the plan closely is that we've designed the grading across the front to continue the natural topography. So you'll see that there's not a lot of grading between the street and the house. And the reason is, as the property's dropping off to the west, we're able to lift the house and basically drain back into the swale, so we're maintaining the same drainage patterns. And that was another initial design parameter that we established and were able to comply with. So the answer is, we don't have a lot of grading around the trees, and we have to remove some to make the sight
It's
line.
pretty flat right by the trees, right in that front part on Hillcrest.
It actually, it appears to be flat, but
It was flat walking it. I mean, not as steep as the back of it is. Right?
you're correct to a certain extent, but just if you study it, I got it now, thanks, Bob. You have an elevation of around 115 on the north side, and it drops down to about 95. So while it does appear to be flat, it
I
isn't
meant
really flat.
This way.
Correct. So from
East
east
to
to west,
It's
and that's what I was
flat.
trying to point out here, is that you'll see, if you look at our grading plan closely, we've managed to keep the general path of the flow there without much alteration, and we've designed the driveway so that they come up over a small culvert to keep that natural flow toward the wetlands. And again, if you look at it closely, you'll see there's not a lot of grading.
Now,
There's also not a lot of trees. While we can show you on the driveway plan where the trees are, we've managed to avoid most of them, which leads us to that good plan.
and then on the north side of Lot 6,
Yes? North side along,
all the way down by Hillcrest,
yes?
it looks like there's some work being done there. Is that actually on Mr. Delabate's property?
In the very beginning, there was a pool, so-called. It looked like a pond, but it was actually a concrete-lined pool from the original state. So one of the first things that had to be done was to remove that pool.
Further over, it's almost like their driveway's on the right, and all the way to the left of Mr. Delabante's property.
Yep.
It looks like there's work, it's almost as if that's actually this, part of this
I
lot.
think that it was, if it
Think it's
doesn't
the
look like
pool?
it's brand new, because we did it last fall, we removed the pool.
Okay.
So if there's a scar there, that's what it was. And it may show still on the old topo. No, we've removed it because it's gone.
Okay.
But there was a pool right up in here between the 20-inch maple, 10-inch maple and the 17-inch maple. It was right there,
Okay.
right along the property of Mr. Delabonte.
And right back to conservation, to where Richard was starting to ask you, or Mr. Maitland was starting to ask you. So her comments were on that 40-inch maple.
I've highlighted those on the original plan in a couple of places.
And I can't find her comments, but they're loose, Richard?
Also on page 25.
They made a comment that they'd like to see that preserved to some extent, and
Then she wrote in separately.
we echo that sentiment. These are the two trees that when we did our field walk, this is a large canopy on
Yeah.
the Japanese maple, we call it. It's not a pointed pin maple, it's a just typical red maple. So it's not a specimen tree, and I brought Mr. Kenny here tonight to reinforce that.
It's just a pretty tree.
We'd like to keep it, but we're going to do the best. And if you'll notice on our design plan, we were careful to shape the bioretention basin to indicate our cognizance of it and preserve it. So we've already met that objective prior to Ms. Savageau requesting it. Similarly, the 32-inch pine, which was the subject of our discussion during our field walk, you'll notice is down below the limit of the grading that we have proposed for the construction on lot number 6. So in advance of their comment, we had already addressed it.
Yeah. And you're going to be able to keep some of the 30-inch pines that are along Hillcrest, you said.
Yes, that's correct. They're maples and pines. There's some of each along the street, but we've identified all of the large trees along that street line, yes. It's beneficial to the developer and the appearance of the neighborhood, so everybody's in favor of that.
Yeah, the development further up Hillcrest failed to do that, and it's just such a contrast, you know. Okay, go ahead, sorry. So I interrupted.
Rich, did you want to?
Oh, no, I was just, ultimately, we'd like to go through all 9 of the comments from
From
Conservation.
Conservation.
When do you wanna do
Find out how
that?
many of them you're going to deal with, or
I'd
assume
like to
all
deal
of
with
them.
all of them.
Okay, well, that's good.
We can do it jointly.
Yeah, let's do it together.
I should say, too, that Tony was on a rare vacation the night we went to Conservation, so Bill Kenny and I kind of labored through without him. And I think that a lot of the issues that probably arose could have been answered much better by Tony than was answered by the two of us. And some of the things that were pointed out by the commission, too, I think Tony had already anticipated, and Bill had, too, to a certain extent. But we sorely missed him on that evening, and so hopefully he can address some of them tonight. Yeah. But, so if we're going to go 1 through 9, we'll go through 1 through 9. The first issue being, we do have a 15% set aside of open space per your requirements. We also have, as we've indicated, oversized lots and kept the lots to a minimum. As Tony's pointed out, we have limitations on how we can develop the lots now with green space requirements, et cetera. So they are somewhat self-regulating, and each lot, as we develop it, will have to be approved by engineering for the proposed development. So they will all work in sync, even if they are phased in as we propose throughout the development. So we're reluctant to have any further precondition placed upon it on those properties and by way of a conservation easement, feeling that we've really addressed, I think, the drainage issues quite well and done the set aside.
What about just delineating a non-development line without actually casting it in the form of an easement?
Well, I'm not sure what that would actually mean in the nature of.
Developing their area.
Yeah.
Or at least, I thought what was discussed is that there would be that area with the acknowledgement that there might be utilities that have to pass through it.
Yeah, because there are.
I think that's what Tony pretty much indicated, is that we anticipate that will be an area of non-disturbance. If you want to call it an area of
Call it
non-disturbance, I
whatever you
think
want.
That's one of our concerns about that. Like I said, the area. the area, some of the areas in the backs of the lots, on the west side of the lots that are shown as white will be encumbered by some drainage, so, be,
No, I understand.
Yeah, so-
But I mean,
we want to be careful with that. The other thing is, we haven't taken advantage of it at this point in our drainage analysis, but one other thing that the manual allows us is to set aside areas that would not be impacted, so that may be to our advantage in the end, to work with each lot and say, we can keep this totally open, but putting hard lines on it is something that is not agreeable to most of us.
Just, if I could ask.
Save a lot of money in property taxes.
The applicant did meet with us before they submitted this application. I'd like to thank them for doing that, because I think that was very helpful. But this is a two-part question, and we kind of covered this a little bit when we had our pre-meeting, but it looks like that is a substantial amount of green. Would it rise to the 40%? And I ask that because you would get an FAR bonus on the homes if you did maintain this as a conservation subdivision with, that green non-development area, so to speak, and then you would get the bonus of the homes.
I thought the houses had to be more clustered in a conservation subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to rework the lots a bit.
I
but-
wondered about that today, and when I was looking, because it's
No, this would be a conservation subdivision, so I don't think the clustering would be required.
Right, it wouldn't be a site plan, there would still be individual lots, but
There are
the
individual lots.
We actually met twice, I think, with you, Katie, and Denise, too, and we did look into all the various possibilities, including doing a cluster zone or conservation subdivision, and it doesn't work within your regulations, and this seemed to us to be the best solution and the best use of the property under all conditions.
Why doesn't it work? Just curious, on a conservation subdivision, why wouldn't it have worked?
Tony did a wonderful analysis. I'll defer to Tony.
Okay. Just curious, just for future reference.
When you set aside the 40% based on the way you recently interpreted the regulation during the Weaver Street application against the land trust, you came to the conclusion that you cannot use the 40% in your analysis. So when you do them, and you take away the 40%, you just don't have enough land to make the FAR come up. And we did that. Remember, Katie, we had
Yeah.
that demonstration. That was really, we had done, just for the record, we did several conservation subdivision layouts. And what ends up having to happen is you have to concentrate all of those lots, whether it be 6 or 8, they're all in this northeast corner. And then when you take the formula and apply it, you have I think it was something like 59% of the allowable FAR otherwise. And these are modest homes right now. They're not going to be homes based on our client's development plan that would be possible on these lots because it doesn't fit in the rest of the neighborhood. So this really is a good plan because it has excess land. We have a lot more open space as a result. A pool is not going to be 300 feet away from the house. So if it comes along, it's going to be up close to the building. And you still have all that white area that will basically be green. And that's, again, another advantage of this development. With only 6 lots as opposed to, and believe me, I squeezed in. I got them all in there, but we only proposed 6.
I think still going back to comment number 1, is there no way for you to feel comfortable with some delineation of that light green area other than an actual easement on it?
I think it restricts the development of each lot as you come in and do them one by one. If we're going to phase them in and I think be somewhat responsive to each lot as we go forward, if you make a strong line, I think that's going to ultimately restrict us overly. But
I would say this, but maybe then what you should do is
Something like that. To encompass the steep slopes adjacent to the drainage area, that would be, I think, something that our client could accept.
Okay.
Because that's not developed, we're not intending to develop it. So this is a wedge, maybe down that lot line between 4 and 5, and following that line that we've delineated here. That seems to be reasonable. Keeping in mind,
that's about a third of the area.
we have to access down here somehow. We have to provide our access down this driveway was our intent, to be able to get here if necessary for maintenance and cleaning. So that's something that we also have to keep in mind, that we have to be able to get across some of these areas that might otherwise be restricted.
So there might be some other ones too, getting close to the, because your wetlands is kind of a funny shape. It's not a strong rectangular shape. It goes up and it sort of kicks off to the right, doesn't it? It's like a,
This one here, what we did was.
no, the actual open space.
On the open space, yes. it's-
Okay.
Yeah.
So
To make up
that-
the 15% and be able to get the shape that
So
we
that
need.
is going to be the light green.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
So we're just, all right, well, maybe, I don't, I just think it's something that I don't think we're going to be moving on this tonight with so many open questions on it. So I think it's something that I think you could look at.
I mean, it would be curious to see, for an example, the area around, that we have the open space that you've proposed, but then the area around the wetland buffer, that will be protected by the wetland regulations, and then if you were proposing some sort of buffer around the basin. Because although I appreciate what you're saying about hard lines and conservation easements, what's to prevent someone 10 years from now from doing something within that green space area that they would be permitted to do? And if you've calculated the basin based on that area being green, how do you reconcile future impacts on that area to the, and how that would impact the detention basin?
Well, again, we're going to have to, lot by lot, get approvals for those engineered lots to make sure that they meet the requirements for drainage. Also, you're
Right,
somewhat
but that's-
restricted in how much you can actually develop the property by the green space requirements that are already in place, so.
Right, but that's today. So the first house, the houses are built, and then, 10 years from now, when they want to do things, I mean, there's, like you said, they're oversized lots, they have a lot of green area requirement, but perhaps that could be part of your analysis then to show, once the homes are developed in this way, what could be removed from the green area per the current regulations, just to show how much of that area that you're showing there would be protected either by the zoning regulations, the wetland regulations, or this proposed buffer area around the detention basin, so we can see what it would look like in reality as opposed to, what a nice big green area that you've got proposed here.
That's fine. I think unfortunately we backed our way into this to a certain
Right.
extent by creating this, and then it became,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
all right, we will look into that.
I'm just waiting for I'm waiting for you to go down the list. Yeah, I mean, I think
Number two.
you've said you're going to look at it,
That's
so.
good. Number one. Number two, an archaeological report was submitted to conservation last week.
Oh, okay.
So she did have it. I will state, I think, for the record, that it was unremarkable. There was nothing particularly unusual.
You found nothing?
No, that's correct. I mean, we found a few pieces of pipes and bottles and things like that, but there was really nothing of note that would indicate that there was any sort of archaeological dig here.
Do we get a copy of that?
Yes. Actually, they have one with me. I'll leave it with the.
Thank
or
you.
I can Dropbox it.
Just put the microphone closer to you, okay?
Certainly.
I want to ask you one question on number 6, by the way, to the comment that, it, quote, "does not appear that parcel 6 would have enough street frontage to allow further subdivision." Remember that comment?
Oh, that's in your comments, not on,
The controlling factor of the development of this subdivision is the shape of the circle it has to fit inside. So starting from the wetlands and working north, that's the way it worked out. But you also have the regulation that you have to have a portion of the house within the circle, so we have that accommodated. You also have the shape of the circle fitting in, then you have the circle for the rear lot. You lose a lot of access way on it. So the answer is, it's a correct observation. I agree.
Excuse me, do you want to continue?
I was going through the Conservation Commission's comments. I believe that's what you're looking for, right? Okay. Lots 4 and 5 have significant amounts of grading. It's recommended this grading be reworked, refined to reduce the impact on the surrounding landscape, and we can look at that again, I guess.
I'll answer that question. On lot number 3, what we did was we placed the house on top of the knoll to eliminate or reduce the amount of ledge that has to be removed. And it relates very well with the elevation that we proposed for lots number 5 and 6. And you'll see that they're 113, 112, 111, or 110. And they're all designed to fit on the topography with minimal amount of earthwork. The end result is that we have to do some filling around the property to accommodate the grading because of our other regulation of grade plane, which requires us to bring it up. And it's not only to floor area, it's also to building height.
4 and 5, I didn't, that was 4.
This was 3, 4, and 5. So again, on 4 and 5, we placed 4 on top of the knoll, and that's elevation 105. And when our first floor is 110, so we're minimizing the amount of earthwork. And as the property drops off in the westerly direction, again, we're just reducing the amount of removal. If we lowered the house, we take out more material. But it doesn't really affect the change in the grade because the grade drops from 85 to 110 over the house site. So we've just made a platform at the back of the building for recreation and practicality. You should also keep in mind this is a 30 scale map, so you can see the proportion better. And then on 5 and 6, or she mentioned 5, so again on 5, it's just a recognition that the ground drops off. And while we will be generating some material, we decided to leave it on site.
With regard to number 4 and number 5, and I think we've already discussed, but it's our intent to try to maintain the two significant sized trees, the Norway spruce and the Japanese maple, and also the trees along Hillcrest Lane. And Bill Kenny actually has devised a plan to see how we could maintain as many as we possibly could in that area. The commission also recommended that we plant more trees around the detention basin. Bill says that's possible. We can do that. They gave him some parameters that he said he could work with, so that's fine. We can live with that. President, the ENS control plan does not adequately address stormwater on site during construction. As we indicated, we're going to be doing phased construction. Every element of it is going to have to be approved by the engineering division. Pardon me?
You skipped over the maintenance road, which,
Number 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maintenance access road is needed to the detention basin. Yes, as Tony said, we know that. That'll be coming across Lot 6 in that corner in order to access the detention basin. Extending the drive on Lot 6 is something to consider, certainly. I mean, that's probably what we'll end up having to do.
but you'll show that on the next, okay.
Yes. And the wetland restoration plan, again, that's something that Bill is working on. We'll be responsive to the commission's recommendations in that regard,
I think so.
and the phasing plan.
Did you skip 8? It felt like you did.
I said we'd have to do that.
I-
We'll have to do that lot by lot as we move along. I mean, we have an overall,
I think that's the thing
ENS.
we keep wondering, I mean, the question is if they do all the lots at the same time.
Well, they're going to have, I think that's maybe one of the things that should go into construction sequencing is that you're going to do all the site utilities at once. And
Correct.
probably create the drainage basins and that
Right.
kind of stuff. But the individual grading of the site plans, you're not going to do that except on the which will mean that there's going to be either some additional retaining walls or, I mean, something, because like I say, those contours are going right across the property lines as if they weren't there. Okay.
I think that addressed all of the Conservation Commission's points. Were there any other points raised by this commission that you want us to address?
Okay.
There's a few.
Yeah.
Looking at the cut and fill for the site, since it was over a match line, do you just add both of the fills for the site? Because I came up with 1,600 yards for the south side of the property, south of the open space,
We'll summarize it. I don't have that number right offhand, so.
1,600 yards on your plans. but-
Yeah, no, I have to, I don't, I
But
couldn't tell you
anyway,
that right at all.
just to kind of come up with it, it looked like there was about 9,800 yards of fill
Okay.
on the property. Does that sound reasonable, right? or-
I think it does, Mr. Malin, but I don't have that at my fingertips
Okay,
tonight.
well, I just took it off. I just,
Right. We tried to quantify it to a certain extent, but I didn't summarize or to total it up. We'll do that for you. Over here on one sheet, we had 8,200
yeah.
based on the basements, the bioretention basin, and the detention basin, okay? And so we had that, about 8,200.
Okay.
So, but we'll pull it all together.
Okay.
Okay, what else?
On the sewer comments, what they said is that they would like to work with the applicant prior to approval.
The sewer comments were pretty simple.
I know, and
They gave us the warning that if you go under a wall, put in a sleeve. We recognize that. He wanted to remind us that
that was the one that
gravity
Patrick
works
sent
best.
today, right? Did
The
he-
sewer.
To me, the most relevant one, or the most important one, was their first comment, which
Yes.
was a statement from you, the engineer.
On the
that the
capacity.
Capacity.
Well, I will say that the sewer is fairly new there, and it is an 8-inch line, and it is gravity, and it goes down to a pump station. So I'm sure well, at that time it was Mrs. Siebert, must have considered full development of the 10-acre parcel, but we'll substantiate that for him.
I think, as you say, a lot of them are just comment, but I think it's the first one that is.
Right, we understand.
The second one is just, again, from the memo that we got from the sewer department, about the 6 or 7 bullets down, it says, the proposed development shows the basement being developed into apartments.
No, that's a mistake, we think.
Well, we think it is, I'm just curious what,
That's, I think, out of left field. That must be a typo or a carryover.
Patrick said it was a mistake.
Right.
I understand, I want to just hear them say it's a
That's it.
mistake.
We didn't submit any plans.
We have no idea where that came from.
All right. Thought maybe it slipped into the
No.
drawing and we didn't have.
Unless there's an incentive in the regulations to do that, which we would consider.
Okay. I think any other, any
No, there's a
any
few
other-
more.
Two things. One thing is, you know, we need an extension on this because we're leaving it open.
Well, there's, before we get, there's.
Oh, we're not ready to say that yet. Wait a second. Does anybody want to say anything?
Pedestrian easement, Richard?
Oh, well, yeah, there is a need for the pedestrian easement into the open space from those 3 lots which don't border it.
Where would you like it?
Two.
That's a good question. Tell us.
Private road.
You said this was a good plan? I'm sure you'll find the best place to put it in a good plan.
I have a question about the rights in Hillcrest Lane.
Mr. Raymer, initially it was called Hillcrest Terrace.
It is the same thing?
It's the same thing, and if you look at the map, I think I enclosed it in my deed history. If I didn't, it starts with the 1899 map, and it indicates that entire loop at that time was referred to as Hillcrest Terrace. So when you look at the deeds coming out and they give rights of access across Hillcrest Terrace, that's what is today known as Hillcrest Lane. I'll provide you with that map if you don't
Oh,
have it.
that reminds, I'm
I
sorry,
just-
Mrs. Raymer, go ahead.
It just seemed to me somewhere I saw that as described as being to the west.
Shouldn't be. I mean, there's no roads to the west at all.
No, it's, no, I'm sorry, it's the west line of Hillcrest Terrace. So we don't generally get all of that in our packets. I asked for the deeds, so I have those, but haven't seen the maps. But, I mean, if you gave them in, Patrick can give them to us, so.
Right, well, I sometimes attach maps when I do the deed history, just to
Right.
make it easy to refer to. I don't know if I did in this case, but I can easily provide them with a map.
So then, the other subset of that is, if this has been, is this property a member? Is there a private association? How does it work?
There is, and we have an understanding, or letter of intent, really, I should say, with them to have 5 of the 6 lots become members of the association and share in the rights and responsibilities of the association.
I see.
We have to formalize that agreement and understanding going forward so that everyone's clear as to what the relationship is. But it is our intent to have 5 of the 6 lots, obviously not one on Palmer Hill, but the other 5 become parts of the association.
But at present, that property is not a member of that association?
I
is that
don't
right?
believe it is in and of itself.
So right
That's
now, it doesn't have any rights?
It has the deeded rights across the
Well,
road,
true,
but beyond that,
true.
no, nor does it have any obligations that I know of.
Okay, fair enough. So all right, if you could, can you give us a copy? Is that something that can be publicized to the extent of giving it to us?
With the agreement with the association that we
Yeah.
entered into? Yes,
Yeah.
we're meeting with them, I believe, on Friday.
Okay.
Sorry, Thursday afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments,
Yeah,
Commission?
just coming back to, on Hillcrest Lane in front of the lots, the proposed lots, there are speed bumps. Those speed bumps, if they don't line up right with the driveways, you guys will assume responsibility, I suppose.
I would assume that since it's a private road, they were probably put in by the association. That's something else
Yes.
we'd have to work out because we're going to repave the road when we're done,
I
and that
can't
would be something we could do.
Are they marked there?
We have some bumps on the road.
Okay, yeah, because they start before the little fancy thing.
Before the what?
The little fancy thing, you know how people put in the,
Little fancy thing?
well, you know how up, you
Oh,
have
the
it.
gates.
Yeah.
Things
The,
on
obnoxious gates.
Yes, exactly. Well, I call them the little fancy things.
Those ones.
Okay, so those would be the responsibility of the developer to maintain, to restore after development?
I think we have to work that out with the association, but it's our intent, and we've discussed this with the association, that we will repave the road in its entirety when we're done as part of our obligation to the association. And it would make sense, obviously, that if they put in those speed bumps and the gates, that we would work out a plan to integrate those into the final development.
Mr. Luca, did you want to say something?
Just one quick point. I did speak to Amy Siebert this afternoon, the Commissioner of Public Works, about the fact that it is a private road, that it's not up to town standards. And you saw Mr. Marucci's comment where he had just kind of given a that's okay kind of comment,
Yes.
right? However, I think since you are going to be coming back to us, it would be in everyone's best interest for you to have a conversation with Ms. Siebert to just get an official waiver, or at least have a conversation with her on that.
There's a little bit of history. In 1979, I think it was, when Hillcrest Lane was still a dirt path, the subdivision of Old Farm Lane came before this commission, and one of the obligations was to upgrade in accordance with what the commissioner then standing required. And that's why you have the paved road now with a much better drainage system than had been there. So, in fact, it's already been through that. It used to
that
be
part
a
of the-
gravel road.
That's part of the deeds?
No, it was part of your subdivision review of the Old Farm Lane. It was Hillcrest, I think of his name in a moment.
But you have the documentation on all of that?
Well, we had construction plans to do it. I can produce those, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good just to have that
It
for the
was,
record.
it
Well,
definitely was a part of an engineering review, some opposition from the former owner of this property, and a resolution for drainage and an upgrade of the pavement and the road from the gravel that it was to the pavement that it is.
When you come back, are you going to come back with a new revised plan showing the pedestrian easements?
Yeah, we're gonna
Because
update some of these.
Because as you're doing that, I think if you could also add the notes that Mr. Leroux mentions in number 8 on page 23, and also the ones that he notes them as staff notes under number 9, but I think if you incorporated all of those onto the revised plan, yes, that would be
I
helpful.
think I have all those notes on this sheet already, but I'll double check and make sure that any concerns have been addressed. But these are our normal subdivision notes that have been updated to reflect this job, but they're consistent with what everything else we've always done. But I'll
Great.
make sure they're all checked off.
Okay. thank
Okay,
you.
good. Any comments? Oh, you go.
Since we have Mr. Kenny here to talk a little bit about the landscaping, could we hear from him?
Certainly. Bill?
Oh, good, thank you.
Good evening. Bill Kenny, Principal of William Kenny Associates, landscape architect and wetland scientist. We have prepared a planting plan. It's focused more on the open space area and the detention basin area. So portions of the open space that are currently ornamental landscape, lawn and other ornamental plantings, we have proposed, put together a plan to naturalize those areas. So we have native meadow plantings and shade trees, native shade trees, as well as proposals to enhance the wetland that flows through this area. This is where the existing driveway crosses over the small stream. So we're going to be removing that pavement and putting in a meadow planting, some lawn area that extends into the wetland. We're going to eliminate that lawn and then reestablish a channel through where the driveway is. So open up, get rid of the pipe there and open that up and restore the watercourse in that location. In the northwest corner of the property where Tony has designed that detention basin, again, we have a meadow planting with shade trees and native evergreen trees as well.
Is there any plan that shows us how many of the existing trees are going to remain?
We have not prepared such a plan.
Could you do
we have
that when you come back, so that we at least have some knowledge of what's going to be remaining around the site
I
and
mean-
so forth?
And I guess some of it, the issue is depending on what the individual homeowners might want, right? But, yeah, if you could, especially kind of with the larger caliper trees.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Any comments from the public?
Good, thank
Okay, we leave this open.
So we're going to need an
We need-
extension to the September meeting.
Is that-
We need an
That's fine.
extension.
Thank you.
We get
They're
no
good till
neighbor comments?
September, I think.
No.
No, it's a must decide July 28th.
They're going to give us an extension to the
We didn't have
September
any neighbor
meeting.
comments?
Must decide. Extension, we need an extension.
He said he
Thank you.
said he would give it to the
Jeff,
September.
we need an extension.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
okay, we now move on to 81 Byram Shore Road.
Okay, I sent you the one light I found, and the other one I could never find. So I've got to ask about it, okay? Because as far as, you'll hear them. Okay. I just feel bad throwing these away.
Chip Haslam for the applicant. With me is Corey Jorgensen, who's the landscape architect from Wesley Stout and Associates in New Canaan, and also I have with me Ron Neal, who's with Ron Neal Lighting Design, San Diego, California. And you had
What was the name of the company again?
Ron Neal Lighting Design. That's how you go, right, Ron? Yep. I will give you a little bit of background for Ron in a second, but I thought I'd just first explain why we're in front of you instead of the ARC. We touched upon this briefly once before, but this project received coastal site plan approval by way of exemption in 2014. And part of the project is to build a tennis court as well as a building next to the tennis court, and it runs adjacent to other property owned by my clients that's on the waterfront. As I said, the application was deemed exempt from coastal site plan approval, and they went ahead with the project, developing the tennis court, and decided that they wanted to put in lighting after the fact, at which time Corey applied to get a permit to do that, and was told that he'd have to go down to P&Z, and that P&Z would then refer him, as they did, to ARC to have that reviewed by ARC. That's about the time that I got involved in the project and looked at the plans and looked at the regulations, and it seemed clear to me under section 151 through 153 that provided the lumens plan actually met the regulations, that it was a matter of right to have the zoning permit issue and the building permit issue, electrical permit, in order to do the work. I thought I almost had Jody Couture convinced, and I think I was pretty close. I think at this point he still thinks I may be right, but and said that's possible orally to me. But nonetheless, we said that we would go to ARC and present our case to them. The night that we went to ARC, Corey and myself, we felt that the ARC wasn't really applying your regulation, but rather was applying some other difficult to understand discretionary type approval process from this. And I note that some of the comments which came down from ARC, I don't recall hearing myself, nor does Corey, including the idea that this is somehow, this tennis court is up on a knoll and with no screening from neighboring properties or from the sound, which is just not true, as you'll see in a moment. But beyond that, we ultimately decided to come back before you to make our case that, in fact, these tennis court lights do comply with your regulations, and as such are, in fact, as a matter of right, and should be approved. There's 6 lights. They are 18 feet tall, the tallest, and they meet all the standards that you set forth in 151 through 153, as Mr. Neal will explain in a moment. In addition to that, however, there's been substantial efforts made to screen the tennis court and the lights, and in fact, it's located in a relatively depressed area of the property, at least as it relates to the adjoining properties, as you'll see in a moment from some photographs as well. So I think the combination of the extraordinary efforts, I think, made by my clients to screen the tennis court and the lights from neighboring properties and the actual topography of the land gives further reason to agree that this is an acceptable use of the property and improvement to the tennis courts by having the lights up. I'd also suggest, too, that tennis, at least in this area of the country, is relatively seasonal outdoors, and that our night skies are relatively light until 8, 9 o'clock at night during the summer hours and would most likely be used, and that a reasonable restriction, say 10 o'clock for the light usage on the court, would be acceptable to my clients in the hopes that any concerns by the neighbors that this would be used for late night parties or whatever would be ameliorated. So that's another consideration and a condition that my client be willing to have you put on it. But before I get into all that, I did want to introduce Ron again and have him speak to the Lumens plan. Yes, Mr. Maitland.
Today, we received a couple of comments from two people who are lighting designers, I believe. I'm not exactly sure of their title, but one of them shows, have you seen this?
No, I have not.
Is there any way, Katie, that they could take a look at that? Because one of them, the one that did a lighting pattern is in real disagreement with what you've given us. Plus, as you'll notice on the drawing, it's sort of been highlighted in red at the property line where the 0.1 is exceeded along that line. The levels shown on the court seem to be quite different than what you're showing. So I'm not too sure whether, but if you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it. The other one was more difficult to understand for me anyway, talking about.
Did you give him the chip? Yeah. Okay, why don't you let him read it? and
I will.
we'll just stop
I
here.
just,
Well, my suggestion maybe in that regard is to have Mr. Neal address his luminary plan
Why
and
don't
discuss
you
it.
just Let him read so that we're all on the same page.
Right, well, then I thought if either of these people here are here tonight that wrote these opinions and they want to speak to them, then Mr. Neal can have a chance to respond to those.
could you tell me, what is the standard for light levels on a residential tennis court?
Well, according to
Foot candles.
your regulations,
No, I'm just curious, what is the, I know what it is at the property line, but to properly light a
Oh, I understand what you're
residential
saying.
tennis court, what is there are standards from the illuminating societies and so forth, and I'm just curious what the standard is for residential
Yeah.
tennis courts.
Excuse me.
Ron Neal.
IES standards for recreational tennis courts are 80 to 59-foot candles. So-
80 to 59,
Right,
so not the other way around, 59 to 80.
right. So, yes, so 59 to 80-foot candles at the max.
So you have on
Average.
your average on the drawing you gave us, I believe, was 54, something like that?
Yes.
50. So you're, what did you say they were again, 80 to 80, 49 to 80?
58 to 80,
And you're below that
yes,
on average?
yes.
There's a question I had that one of the drawings, the drawing that's up there on the map uses a CXLS fixture, and your drawing, I believe, called for a CXL1.
Yes, the cut sheet from LSI that's shown on the plan provided by Wesley Stout is a full specification cut sheet. The number referenced on our calc is an abbreviated number just to show it as a fixture type.
But is it the same fixture?
It's absolutely the same, identical fixture.
Now, on this one, that at least we got that cut sheet, what are the cutoff baffles that are going to be installed on this light? They show one for sure, which is, they call it the house baffle, because
Yes, there's literally two types of baffling on the fixture. It comes with a Type 3 forward throw distribution reflector, so that's inherent
In the design.
into a completely shielded light source. So it's basically a shoebox generic type of description of a fixture, has a Type 3 forward throw IES standard fixture distribution, and then beyond that, there's a house side shield and cutoff, which protrudes below the fixture to ensure no visible direct eye line or sight lines to the source itself.
Is there anything is there any kind of a cutoff baffle that can be applied that would extend along the side of that light fixture? Because it's easy when you're behind it and you're reviewing it straight on, but if you move to just a position between the two light sources, you're going to be looking at it at 45 degrees.
Correct.
Is there any way to further shield that light source?
Not without adding extra fixtures, because what would happen is you would now then have, your uniformity of the light distribution would be disrupted, since it does go out forward, but it also goes out into an angle. So by the time that is shielded, you would have to add more, and so you would lose your uniformity. And from our understanding of this site, those are not the sight lines that are critical to the neighboring properties. It's really behind and them, onto the left or the right of the property.
Well, it certainly could be, I mean,
From these locations here.
Take the microphone.
From the south end of the site, you can see the adjacent home is located approximately here. That's where the house side shields are located on this back to prohibit the light from exceeding to the property line. And also to the north, you'll see that they also would be, these three would have it at that point.
okay. Now, but what about, I know there must be some sort of cutoffs. It's either within the lens or the reflector within the lens, because your drawing shows 0, 0, 0 at the property line to the east.
Well, it's not only the optics of the fixture that's prohibiting that, it's the 10-foot obscure or opaque fence and the dense landscaping, plus the elevation change.
So it is a combination of those three things that is.
All that has been taken into account. This was modeled with AGI 32. It's the industry standard for professional lighting calculations. And all the elevations, mounting height, glare shield, reflectivity of a tennis court of a dense green at 0.30. So that's going to absorb a lot of this light. Therefore, you see a 1,000-watt luminary on there. So that's all been factored into this calc.
Did you look at any other kind of a light source, like an LED light source?
Yes, LEDs are great for many other applications, but sports lighting, we're still not there yet. Metal halide still is the most efficient fixture when it becomes watts to foot candles or lumens. Watts to lumens, metal halide HID sources still exceed the efficiency of LED.
Does that answer my, I don't know.
Why don't,
So-
they ought to
If it-
take a look at this letter. You haven't seen this, right?
What
No, there were
kind
two
of
letters.
efficiency in terms of energy use?
Yes, and overall, you would have to use a higher wattage to get the same light output using LED for a sports lighter.
So in other words, it's higher energy use
Yes,
when you say higher wattage. So the efficiency, is there a glare differential?
there would be more glare actually with LED. You would take multiple sources to obtain that. You'll see that in big Vegas type of sports lighting or building flood lighting where there's multiple sources. With the HID metal halide, there's one light source. So it's much easier to control with an optic of a reflector and a glare shield.
You also have this there, Mr. Haslam. Give you this one also.
I did receive this, Mr. Heller, already.
You've seen
Gave
this?
it to Mr. Neal to
I thought-
look at. Thank you.
I
just
thought
got
you
it.
saw that one. Do you want to react to this at all?
And down some photographs, just a cover sheet of the coastal site plan extension, but some photographs of the property, because I note that the letters to the commission, the experts and the neighbors seem to mischaracterize the settings of the tennis court and the lighting. The first photograph that you see is actually the tennis court, and you're looking the northwest. And as you can see, so that would be out towards Byram Shore Road. And you can see there's a lot of vegetation there, some that's existing, some that's been added as part of the project. Also, you can see the change in topography and the wall surrounding the tennis court in this area. The next picture, you're looking out southerly, actually towards the Koenigsberger's house, which is in front of this, which you can just see through the trees down, which is down close to the water. So the idea that, I think is one of these letters, that these lights would disrupt marine life, which is more than 100 feet away from the tennis court, and clearly down below this, I think is somewhat far-fetched. You can also see, again, the topography going up to the west, adjoining the neighbor's property. It's quite an incline. At points, I think you go from I believe it's 46 feet elevation at the tennis court itself, to as much as 56, I believe, Corey, on the neighbor's property. 42 to 56, excuse me, so 14 feet difference in elevation very quickly going from east to west. The next photo is actually a picture which is looking in the northeasterly direction. This is again back towards Byram Shore Road. Again, you can see that this tennis court is sculpted into the hill. So similar with the first photograph, this photograph would indicate that the impact on Byram Shore Road would be practically minimal. You're looking at 18 feet. Again, the topography and the natural screening as well as the additional screening would seem to protect adjoining neighbors, at least across Byram Shore Road and driving down Byram Shore Road. The next photograph is looking southeast. Again, you can see significant screening. This is next to, I believe it's Mrs. Zimmer's property to the southeast. And then the last photograph is again looking northerly, again showing the screening, the topography, et cetera, from the tennis courts. So I think this is indicative of what you actually have on this site, that it's not a tennis court which is up on a knoll that's going to be very visible from the sound from the neighbors' properties. In fact, it's very low down, and these the lights in relationship to them will be muted, and again, meet your regulations. There's also a question, excuse me. I think you had in the briefing session, and staff passed along to me, whether there were any other lighted tennis courts on Byram Shore Road in the area. If I could pass out this as well.
We'll show you your lighting. Your lighting, what you got on your face.
Yeah, I'll have you do that Ron, in a second, okay? This is a application that was made back, this is for 207 Byram Shore Road, which is down the street a bit, and again on the water side. And it was an exempt application for new construction, tennis court. Gene Schaefer approved it, and then they later came back in merely with an electrical permit to put up 6 1,000 watt pole-mounted luminaires, as you can see. So at that time, and the regulations haven't changed in any persuasive way with regard to lighting on 151 through 153 from the time that this was approved to the present day. So you can see at that time, if the property was found to be exempt from coastal site plan approval, as it was, the applicant could and did come in and make application merely under an electrical permit to build the lights. These are the lights, a picture in the back of the lights that are actually constructed at 207 Byram Shore Road. As you can see, it's at the back of your packet. They're tall. This was actually taken from Byram Shore Road itself, standing on the road. That's where the tennis court is, and that's where the tennis court lights are. So by comparison, I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it, but this was done, and it was done under the same regulations by merely having sign-off in the building department back in the 90s. I would suggest that
Mr.
this
Haslam?
is the right way of doing it, which is having
Haslam, I'm looking at the
Yes.
regs.
Yes.
The regs are dated 2005, 2010, so they've clearly been updated since, I mean, Ms. Schaefer was in that department very.
I believe the ones I attached, I went back and got them out of the mid-90s approvals that I attached. So your regs, I'm sorry, the current regs, yes, there have been changes, but you'll note that the applicable sections haven't changed at all. So if you look at, for instance, the purpose of the regulations, the foot candle power that has to be there, the exposure to neighboring properties that you can't actually see the fixture, they're all the exact same regulations. Nothing else has changed. And the same is true with regard to coastal site plan review with regard to lights. And I'm not saying that holding this up is a good example. I'm just saying that's what you could do in the past. And I think it behooves the town to actually review it and make sure you do comply with the regulations, because I'm not sure this does or ever did. But this certainly does by comparison, and it meets all of the regulations, and I think it not only meets the letter, but also the spirit of them in what's been done.
Have you had a chance yet to look at the, that one plan that we got from, in the letter form showing the lighting levels that they've calculated and show?
Ron, could you
Looking at this, just in, quick glances, it's hard to determine what, height they're mounting are as established on this. It's not showing the
I was under the
max to
impression
mins,
she used your layout.
or what software was actually
I have
using,
no
or what the
idea.
reflectancies were. I mean, there's all these other things that make up the calc, and they can be, like, lots of calculations or statistics manipulated to show something that may be different than what we actually ran. But if you use the same exact criteria we did, which is based on the reality of the project, you will get the same results. We ran these calcs multiple times. If I can, I'll show you, the calcs and the numbers, they're based on 5-foot increments, and even for many of us that look at this all the time, it's a bit confusing. We did a rendered calculation, which is an interpretation in a software program that gives more of an accurate or a realistic example of what this may look like.
Take the phone with you.
Is it possible to actually bring something in and kind of?
You may have seen this. We submitted this calc as well. It actually shows the location of the 10-foot screening wall. It shows the location of the tall elevation changes to the south, as well as the massing of the plants on the west end of the court. You can see the brightness of the court is not overly lit. It's at the minimum side. And then you can also see the darkness drop off very quickly, even before the property line.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Haslam?
I think the only other thing that we might want to consider, if depending on who else we hear from tonight, would you also be amenable to doing a lighting test after they're installed to show that we did not exceed the 1000 at the property line?
Certainly.
Has anybody talked to the neighbors at all?
That was Solomonic.
With the neighbor that was the most, we thought, impacted initially, we've spoken with without success. The other neighbor we didn't think had an issue with it, but I believe she's here tonight, so I'll let her speak. But we've tried to do everything we possibly could to not only meet the regulations, but also to address concerns by providing this screening.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Haslam, the
Macri.
screening fence, does that go all the way around the tennis court or just that one end?
Partial, I believe. Corey, do you want to address that?
Corey Jorgensen, Wesley Stott Associates. Currently, the fence does not go along the entire length of the tennis court, but once the lights are installed, it will be installed with the screening.
So it's not a new fence?
It's a new fence, but he just didn't want the whole fence unless he has to do it. And the lights would determine that he does have to do it.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Neal?
Any comment? Sorry, did you have something more?
Yes. If you used a double-headed fixture and made them lower to the court, could you use less wattage?
No, I'm afraid we'd still have, the double-headed fixture would just use half of the wattage you would have now, but just two of them, typically. And typically, you don't see that type of a distribution when you have forward throw, where you have at one location, one luminary, one distribution of light from that location. So if you have two, it really starts to increase uniformity issues again.
Okay. Can you explain to me the height of the fixtures themselves? It's 18 feet off of the tennis court?
Yes.
Tennis court? Okay.
Yes.
What's the height off of the adjacent grade behind them?
Corey probably need to answer that.
Specifically, where are you talking?
This would be, I think, the southern property line, that area.
So the grade behind the light?
The grade, yeah, it seems from the section, you've got the light fixtures are on top of the deck of the
Yeah, it
and then
directly.
it drops down a low off the wall. then I have the landscaping, and then a property line. What's the height of the pole? What's the height of the Lumiere in relationship to the grade past that wall?
On the other side.
On the lower side of the wall.
Yes, on the lower side.
Exactly.
It varies. It varies.
Well, take a shot at it.
Give us the
I would say
range.
this corner that wall is probably about 3 feet high
Okay,
at the
so-
tallest point. And then this slope rises toward Byram Shore, and so that height diminishes.
Okay, so that at one corner, we've got an 18-foot pole plus the 3 feet of the wall, so it's actually off the grade in that area. It's
And-
that much higher.
And I understand your point, and that's why I wanted to show that section, because I think that would be the highest of that pole to ever be in relationship to the neighbor.
In
So
relationship to
even with that in mind,
Right. And I'm looking at your
Show
section,
that.
and it seems that your section just barely works with the house side shield, and I'm not even too sure if the house side shield is going to be even that long at the back side of this fixture. I
well,
think that...
I did, excuse me, I'm sorry, I did show that to scale, per the spec, so.
Okay. The caliper of the plantings that are intended to go in, is that going to be, what heights are we talking about? What thicknesses? Tell me about what's happening with that, because we're relying on a lot of screening here.
Well, they're already in.
They're already in.
They're already
So actually, what I'm
planted,
looking
so
at is
What you see in the picture, in the images today, they're in. They're 14 to 16 foot height spruce.
okay. The ARC looked at that as well, and they said that the screening wasn't adequate with that. Can you tell me what's there in terms of screening? What kind of plants are there?
Yeah, if you look at, this plan represents what's been planted there. So they're 14 to 16 foot Norway spruce, spaced as close together as we can get them along that property line.
Okay. What is their maximum height when they finally...
Maximum height?
Yeah,
Well,
well,
they can get 60-plus feet tall eventually.
Okay.
Did the Architectural Review Committee see these photos?
Are
And
these the actual photo, is that, or
Yeah,
is that
these are
the
the-
computer?
These are actual
These
photos.
are the
Yeah,
actual
no,
photos?
that's not.
Yeah, so that's, yep,
These are them right there.
thank you.
And the Architectural Review Committee reviewed those? These are the,
Yeah,
were
we
the
did not
planting
change,
in at the
yeah, we
time
did not
that?
change the planting.
So the plantings were in at the time you went before the Architecture Review Committee?
Yes.
Did they see these pictures?
The architectural review?
Yeah.
No, not those. No, those are new.
So they didn't see the,
Yeah, no, we've pretty much finished the landscaping around the court, so it's a little more enhanced than
Right.
where it was before.
thank you.
Anything else, Commission?
Yes, Mr. Haslam, have you, the two properties, neighboring properties, have the houses closer to the water. Have you talked to those neighbors? Or have they talked to you?
Not me directly, no.
Okay. It'd be interesting to me to see from their homes, from the higher rooms in their homes, how much of the tennis court is screened. That would help a lot.
That's not your regulation. It doesn't provide for that in 151 to 153.
Right.
So it'd be similar to looking at somebody's swimming pool, I suppose, in which there are plenty in the neighborhood, or the like.
Okay.
Carport, driveway, whatever. But the intent was, unfortunately, we were somewhat limited in what you can do with regard to this because there's a function of these lights, and that is to allow you to play tennis at night. So we've done the minimum amount necessary, which is 6 lights, basically at 18 feet. We looked at seeing whether you could lower them or do anything else. It's a function of the use. You can't. That's the minimum standard allowed. So the only other thing we could do is look at, and we have the topography in our favor, which is low down compared to the houses, how do we better screen it, not only to meet the regulations, but also to hopefully ameliorate some of the concerns of the neighbors, which we've tried to do. Beyond that, there's not a whole heck of a lot that you can do and still play tennis at night for an hour or so after dusk in Connecticut. That's really the extent of it. So if there was more we could do, but there really is not if you're going to allow me to do that.
If the neighbors invited you to come and take a look, would you go?
Oh, I have been to the property many times, Mr. Macri. I'm very familiar with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Well, here's an interesting.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name's Christopher Bristol, and I represent the property owners on either side of the property. Condis Babiars to the, call it south, I guess, and Lynn Zimmer to the north. Thank you. Excuse me. And they are very much opposed to this application. We did speak at ARC against this application, and we have several very major concerns with it. I guess first and foremost, when we're talking about the lights, and I'll rely on the information in your packets because you'll have it in front of you.
Is that engineer here tonight?
I'm sorry?
Is the engineer that wrote the letter here tonight?
No. No,
So we can't discuss it with them?
neither were available. I did all I could.
Because there are inaccuracies in the letter about waterfront, so you want that to go on the record?
If you're talking about the argument that Ms. Calemo made about the affecting marine,
Yes.
Whatever's in the letter, I will submit for the record. Okay. And we do have again very serious concerns about these lights. As discussed earlier, we have 18-foot poles, all right, on top of the tennis court deck, as Mr. Mackey pointed out. And if you look at the grades around it, and again, you can see in your files, the deck of the tennis court is about 40. It's at elevation about 46. Okay, and it goes forward, and it's built into the hill or knoll or whatever you want to call it, forward there. However, the slope does drop away out this way, outward as you go. And I just brought this GIS map so you can see a more broader view of it. If we're talking here, the former side of the pool would be the area of the tennis court that we're talking about. And again, that's about 46. You drop down to about 40 here, and you slope down. And again, this is the other client's property where there's a house now. 40's there, it drops down there, and it drops down the other way as well. My client over on this side, their house is about elevation 50, and Ms. Zimmer's house over here is about elevation 40. Okay, so when you look at those relative to where the lights are, okay, 18-foot lights on top of a tennis court deck, that's about elevation 46. You're up at about elevation 64. Okay, we're at about 50 here for the first floor elevation. So it's basically on par with for the first or second floors of this building. Pretty much the same way, same effect over here. Okay. About the second letter, or the first letter, depending on how you look at it, in the materials that you were given, was by Gary Novosel, I believe. And what he pointed out was this, is that when you look at the product specs of the light fixtures that we're talking about, okay, they all call them full cutoff, which is required, and that's fine and well. But what he points out is this, is that for the term full cutoff, it still allows for light to come out at this 90 to 80 degree angle, basically sideways, okay? So you have this portion of light that's full within the industry standard, calling it a full cutoff. However, it does have light coming out on the sides, okay? And that, I think, is significant given the elevations of the surrounding properties. I think it's very significant. Furthermore, I think it's sort of lost in the translation here in that, you know, that we all focus on the light intensity at the property lines. You know, we have to have 0.0. That's not the only standard. You also have to have the light source not be visible from the adjacent property as well. And I think that is a huge problem, given the fact that, again, these poles are very, very high relative to this deck, the tennis court, and relative to the surrounding properties. Okay, so it puts it on par with, again, with very viewable space from these adjacent properties.
It's my understanding that in the past, the determination on light source has always been to describe the actual source of the light, which is the bulb inside.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the light emanating from a lens or of the fixture itself. And therefore, these are shielded by a lens, so the light source is not visible.
So I guess, so to clarify, so if a bulb has covered by a lens, then that's sufficient to have it not be considered visible from an adjacent property.
That's my understanding of the way that phrase has been interpreted for a long period of time, and I believe that's the standard that's held.
And that's runs contrary to the letters that I had submitted to you. When I had asked the experts that question, at least Rachel had put it in her letter. I think Gary, the other expert, had commented more upon the technical standpoint, but both of them had said emphatically, no, you'll definitely see that from this adjacent property. So I will submit that. So I guess, but to be clear though, I wanted to have that, I wanted to make that for the record, make that statement that there is other regulations in place. And on that point, I would ask the question, the original submission of this application did have a lumen plan, and it showed about on the, called the southern property line, 0.3 or 0.4 at certain places. I don't think anything has changed in terms of the light fixture or the screening or anything else, so I'm wondering how that changed from then to now.
Well, the light fixtures changed.
Was the light fixtures have changed?
Well, in the ARC presentation, somewhere.
I know there's a question about LED versus metal halide or something.
Right. And they say they're LED, and that's what they got denied by ARC. In the denial by ARC, it says LED. I just went back to check it.
I would submit that was a typo. I don't think there was any discussion of an LED fixture in there, and I think based upon the applicant's consultant there, they said it wasn't very feasible regardless.
Okay, hold on a second. Thank you. Yes, it says proposed 6 18-foot LED 1,000-watt lights.
Well,
And all of that says it's, well, 1,000 watts wouldn't be LED, so it's a little strange.
And that's how we're.
Right?
I mean, I'll defer.
1,000 watts wouldn't be LED. Can we?
Do you want to ask a
Would
question?
that be okay, Donald, if he answered a question? Because I think that would, rather than say there was a
Sure,
typo.
he has to come up, though.
So the question is, when it was presented to ARC, did you use the Quartzider XL lights that have that cutoff?
Yeah, we always had metal halide initially proposed. I agree with the opposing counsel here, is there was probably a typo from the
Okay.
response. However, what things did change was modeling the calc initially was modeled with a 6-foot fence to obscure the view, and now we actually modeled it with the accurate 10-foot fence that is there.
Okay, so you've never changed,
The source has always been intended to be a 1,000-watt metal halide source.
but it's always been these Quartzider XLs?
Yes,
It's always been those specific that have the cutoff?
yes.
Okay, and that are
Thank you.
designed for that?
Did you
Okay.
want to continue?
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
So those were major concerns that we had. Again, I think that if the commission chooses to interpret viewing the source thusly, I would still submit to you that the glare that's emanating, even from a full cutoff, side to side, for all of the lights on the fixtures around the court, I think are significant. I think would cause adversely impact the neighbor's property. When you're talking about screening, screening is another issue that we had a problem with, and ARC, we certainly agree with ARC that the screening is inadequate. What they had proposed, and apparently what all they intend to do, is the installation of the evergreens and some bushes around the edge. If you look at their planting plan, you'll notice that where the trees are going, it starts off in the middle and goes to the lower slopes. So they're actually planted on the ground outside of the tennis court, outside of the retaining wall holding up the tennis court. All right, so you're dropping down, the trees are planted 3 or 4 feet lower. Okay, if those are only going 14 feet high or so, it still leaves 6 or 7 feet up to the fixture. Okay, so I would submit to you again that the screening there, although the potential for pines and spruce to get very big, I think is not, it would not be adequate. First of all, the evergreens, as we all know, are tapered at the top. Okay, I would not think, given their location, that they would get to that height necessary in order to to adequately screen everything. Also, there's the installation of a 10-foot fabric mesh fence, or I don't know what you call it, along the fence. Again, it's only 10 feet high, which when there's 18 feet of pole there, it leaves a lot to be desired. Okay, so all these things being said produces a very adverse impact and glare and light obtrusiveness and light trespass onto the adjacent properties. Now, I also want to make this point as well, in that what the applicant's doing, and I certainly can appreciate the position, but claiming as a right that you can do this with the simple production of a lumen plan, I think is not the right way to go about this. There's the high potential in these instances for misuse, for improper installation. These things need to be checked. Okay, these lights of this caliber, lights of this nature, for this purpose, they can spring up all over town, and neighbors traditionally, I think we all know, are often concerned about this and complain about it. And to bypass ARC, which is the body that is most able to review such an application, such an impact to the neighbors, I think it would be a real disservice, and it would not be proper to circumnavigate them and proceed as of right to install these lights, this or anywhere for that matter. So all these things being said, I think, again, I would submit to you that we're here to modify a site plan. Okay, it's a coastal site plan, and I think, as I mentioned to staff before, that when you look at coastal site plans, it incorporates the regular site plan standards, which include compliance with lighting regulations, which include making sure that neighbors and such are free from nuisance and all those things. The lights proposed here, in my view, based upon what I said, based upon the information that you've been given, will certainly adversely impact the neighbors, and they should be denied.
Thank you.
Mr. Bristol, I
Yes.
just have a question.
Sure.
Can you go over again the elevations of the other houses versus in comparison to the platform of the tennis court?
If you look at the information in your file, the elevation of and there's an engineering plan in your file. I didn't have a large version of it. It's actually quite confusing because there's a lot of layers.
It's 46.2.
46.2, and that's the elevation of the tennis court. If you look at the grade around the tennis court, toward the middle, it starts sloping this way. It's sloping down. So toward the south end, as Mr. McAvoy was pointing out, I see elevations about 44, 42, about 42 when you get toward the end. Okay, so
Just want to know what the elevation of the deck is versus the elevation of the other houses. At
here I
ground
have
level.
about 50 for elevation of the house. Here I have about 40, and there's the tennis court deck is 46 based upon the engineering plan.
Okay.
Can you confirm on this GIS map?
Is your light on?
The tennis court is where this old pool was?
It's 5.
Well, no, I'm just.
That was the right question. There's your question.
Yes, it would be there.
And so from this, you represent
Stay on one side.
89 and 75. So 89, based on this scale, your client's house is about 200 feet from the tennis court?
I'm proud. I haven't scaled. I mean, I'm not scaling it out now, but I understand. It is removed.
And based on this GIS map, the client's house is at elevation 52?
More or less, yes.
10 feet above the tennis court.
Yes.
Okay, and on 75, Byram Shore.
Well, that would be 52. Would be about 6 feet above the court.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just confirming that on 75, it's at elevation, trying to find one.
I have 40 and change.
It goes down?
I guess I'm going by my GIS, assuming that's the same data.
Okay.
Mr. Fox, let us in on what
No, I just
He's
trying
trying
to
to
confirm how
get his
far
brain
away
around
for
the
the
whole
house.
Yes, and that's, I guess, and that's what we're looking at here is that, again, it's not necessarily a null as Mr. Haslam was talking about, but it is sort of isolated and it is raised up. It's projecting out a little bit like a dock or something, if you will, while everything slopes down. One client's house being a little bit higher can easily see down into it, right? The other one, although a little bit lower, I think experiences the same problem given the heights and intensity of these lights.
You made your point. Did you want to make any comment? No. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments
Yes, Mr. Heller?
from the public?
I have one final comment. The Division 14 for the lighting requirements under the business zone, section 152. This is something that I know that ARC has done for a long time, as following this guideline as their interpretation that exterior lights shall be designed so that the filaments, light sources, or lenses are shielded with opaque material. So I know that ARC's looked at, and they do look at the lamp inside, but they also agree that the lens that covers the lamp is actually where the light emanates from, and if the light source comes through the lens, that's where it's going to be most visible, and that's what they're talking about. Is not necessarily just the lamp itself, but the lens where it comes out of.
And further to Mr. Macri's point, again, I think it's important to again stress this point here that if there's a full cutoff, does not mean that there's absolutely no light. There's certainly light coming out the sides that's visible around.
We got your point.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Ma'am?
Hello. My name's Lynn Zimmer.
Ma'am, use the microphone.
Okay.
Would you help her lower it?
Thank you.
And what
Hi.
is your name, please?
Lynn Zimmer.
Semmel?
Zimmer.
Zimmer.
Zimmer. And I live on one side of this property. And
Which side do you live on, ma'am?
I live on the street number.
On the north.
On the north. Yes, and I don't think anyone has actually said that this whole property that you're talking about with the tennis court and the lights is 2 acres. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's a 2-acre lot. And they've built a huge house on the water, another quite large house on the street where they tore down a house, and now they're putting this tennis court in between. And, I mean, I think that's quite important for neighbors who are close to them. And I just think you should know that. And now, actually, the whole property is all lit up at night. It's got nothing to do with tennis court lights. It's got to do with lighting. And I think Corey, this gentleman right here, would tell you that it's totally lit up like a circus, for whatever that's worth.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to talk? Mr. Haslam?
Thank you. Just to summarize, Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out, I believe, too, that the topography shows that between the tennis court and Mrs. Zimmer's property, there's also another knoll or ridge, which is at, I think, 60 feet elevation. So that definitely interrupts the view between the two buildings, as well as the distance, which is about 200 feet. But I do want to point out to the Commission that I think that when you look at the purpose of Division 14, it says, 151, the purpose of the article. The purpose of this division shall be to reduce to reasonable limits trespass of artificial lighting except street lighting. Luminaries used for exterior lighting shall be full cutoff luminaries to reduce night sky light pollution. So it states right here that the purpose of this section is to reduce to reasonable limits trespass, and then you go on to set what those reasonable limits are. And we meet those limits under 152 and 153. In that, we have full cutoff lights, you can't see the lens from the property line, and we do not exceed 0.1 foot candles from the property line. So we meet your regulations, and I suggest to you by doing that, by meeting those regulations, we have in fact reduced the limit of the lighting to the reasonable levels that you yourself have set. And I'd ask that you approve the application.
I have one more question. This, Section 6152A2 states, adjacent to residential uses, the light source shall not be visible at ground level or above. It seems to me that we've got diagrams on at ground level, but the concern raised by Mr. Maitland and others was addressed to what about above ground level.
Well, you won't see the light source from above ground level. You're not seeing it from ground level. You certainly won't see the light source from above ground level.
But the, radiating light, if you will, are you saying it will be zero?
No, you'll have some reflection off the tennis court, but a tennis court like of this level, I believe, takes 70%, I believe,
Right.
of illumination is absorbed into the court itself. So you'll get some, like you would a light on your driveway, I suppose, or your back patio or something. There'll be some, but it reduces it dramatically, particularly when you have a green surface like this rather than a whitish gray patio surface or a lighter surface. So it will actually absorb 70% of the light that's on it. But also, that's at the court level itself, which is surrounded by various elevation changes, which I think are going to minimize the impact on the neighbors from looking out. Plus, as I said, we're more than willing to agree to have the lighting sources tested after installation,
right.
and also to turn off the lights at 10 o'clock at night.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, are we ready for a vote?
And just one quick point of clarification. The fencing that Corey was talking about will now go all the way around
Yes.
the court at
We're
10
gonna
feet
put-
high?
If we can't have the lighting, it didn't make sense to put the fencing up, but if we're
see what
going to
you're
have the
saying.
lighting, we have to put it
Put the
up so it
fence-
go
thank
up.
you.
That's a condition,
Are we
too.
ready for a vote? Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Maitland, would you make a motion, please?
Just a second.
I'm waiting a second.
He's waiting a second. His seconds are short, Donald's second.
I believe that since this is a site plan review and not a special permit review, that the standards that we are obligated to follow are contained within the site plan regulations. And they do reference, one of the standards in the site plan is referencing 152 and 153, which are in fact the lighting regulations that we've been talking about. And under the residential, the light should be limited to 1/10 of a foot candle at the property lines. And I do believe that this section 153 also covers the lighting of tennis courts, because under section E of that section, it says, "For the purposes of the section, all residential dwellings in a residential zone, as well as tennis courts, platform tennis courts, and other similar recreational facilities are included." So I believe that it is anticipated by the regulations that there will be these facilities in residential zones. The criteria of the lighting at the property line is the only enforceable one that I know that applies to this, and they do, under what they have submitted to us, meet that regulation. They have agreed further to extend the opaque material on the fencing around all three sides of the court, north, south, and east. They have the east and the south now, and they're going to continue it to the north. I think further that they have agreed to a 10 p.m. shut-off, which would reduce any impact of this on the neighbors. And lastly, I believe that an as-built photometric plan will have to be conducted on the site to ensure that these fixtures as installed would meet the regulations. That's based upon that I would move the approval of the site plan.
Second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Pardon me?
You got three, so I think Andy was first to the line. Okay.
What was that? I'm sorry.
On the second, who seconded?
Mr. Levy seconded. What's your comment?
Well, Andy said it first. It was, oh, you want to?
So the vote is 5-0? Okay, thank you. Thank you, folks.
You want to?
Okay, we're now on a public hearing, ma'am. First item on the public hearing is a final coastal site plan and special permit 89 and 137 River Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. This property is and has been a marina for many years. Currently is not occupied except by a fruit and vegetable stand that is behind where the old Fjord Fisheries building is. What we're proposing here is a three-phased approach to have this as a rowing club. And the goal here is to be able to establish the club for the fall with the facilities that are here now. And I would add, we just received this afternoon the certificate of permission from the state DEP for reconfiguring the floating dock on the south side of the property and with the new ramp, so that it would now be in this configuration with this new access ramp. The state has given us the certificate of permission, and we've provided a copy to staff. It just came in this afternoon, otherwise we would have gotten it to you earlier. This is a group that has a number of other rowing clubs, two very close by, one in Westport on the Saugatuck River and one in Rye. And they're looking to provide the same services in Greenwich that they've been providing in those communities. In order to operate for the fall, all we need to do are have racks for the boats here, some temporary toilet facilities or porta-johns. The rest of the site will remain as is. I think there was a comment in the staff report about regrading. There's no regrading of any kind proposed here. And we can certainly stripe the area, which is primarily gravel. The whole area was boat storage in the winter and a marina in the summer. And we certainly can stripe for, we showed 46 spaces. The plan that you approved back in 2012 actually had 95 spaces on it with a new, very large building. Certainly there's more than ample parking. There are 22 boat slips over on the east side of the property, which frankly are not in very good condition. My client would not be renting them out or using them. We're not sure whether we'll just have them removed because they're not really part of the rowing club plan. So that would be phase one. Phase two would be to come in and renovate at least the building here, which is where the offices and storage was when it was a marina. This building, we're not sure whether we're going to do anything with it, but for the time being, we would not use it at all. It's not habitable in its current condition. And we're not sure whether as part of phase two we would come in with a plan. The goal would be to open as a rowing club now for the fall, and then return to you in the fall with more of a layout and the proposed rehabilitation of these buildings and then the uses of them. Phase three would be to construct a new building for storage of the boats, for offices, for exercise area to be used in the wintertime. And we would bring that back to you probably in the winter or spring of next year.
Couple of things. Right now, there's an approved plan on this.
Yes.
Is it your intention to void that plan and withdraw it, or
well,
eliminate it?
It's not our plan. I can tell you we are not intending to proceed with that plan. It had rowing tanks. We're not going to be proceeding with any rowing tanks. And the building will probably be in a different configuration than what you approved. So I could say that I'm willing to void it, but I'm not sure I have the authority to do that.
But is their statement that they do not intend to rely upon that plan good enough?
Well, it's a question, so who owns the property? I mean, the applicant under the previous approval, it was,
It's currently owned by Mianis Marine and Mr. and Mrs. Fred Peters.
And that's
And-
who was on the previous.
and that was who was on the previous approval. So you representing them?
Yes, I'm representing them and the contract purchaser, which would be operating the rowing club.
So I would think based on that.
But they
that
have
you-
authorized me to, and that's true, since it was the owner that was granted that approval, yes, I do have therefore the authority, now that I'm thinking about it more, to void it or withdraw it or terminate it, however you wish me to word that.
Rescind, I
that
think we've
rescind.
used in the past. Rescind.
Rescind is probably the best word.
Okay, good one.
So, yes, we
a piece of paper?
rescind that. I do have some, and I will provide a letter of rescission to the staff upon completing the presentation.
Now, the parking plan that you've shown, since it is your intention to maintain the uses in those buildings with one exception apparently, which is the Old Fjord Fisheries, which I guess is in your parking layout as retail?
It has retail on one floor, and it has an apartment above it.
And both of those are not occupied?
No, they're not occupied.
Okay, so the first floor retail had 5 spaces assigned to it, the residential had 1 space, and...
The boat slips, 22.
Well, the boat slips are 33, actually. There's 22 slips at 1.5 spaces per slip, so...
A regulation that I would hope the commission will consider modifying at some point, but
We are
yes.
looking into the WB zone, as you know, but today...
Today, I realize that it's 1.5 spaces. I can represent to you and make it as a condition of approval that none of the 22 slips will be occupied and used or rented out.
Okay.
But as I said, we're showing 52 spaces here. We could show many more and have them all conforming and have all of the aisle widths conform to what's required.
The only use, I mean, there's 17, 20. Basically, there's 20 spaces for some storage, some offices, and some lockers. So I guess that's all in building, the north building.
That's correct. We're calling it Buildings 1 and 2. It's one structure, though, Building 2 being just storage and Building 1 being storage and offices.
Right. So that accounts for 20 spaces. And then the remaining 28 spaces, forgetting the 4 handicap, would be for the rowing club,
Yes.
correct?
For storage of boats.
There will be no winter storage of boats on site at this point.
I thought there was the rowing,
Power boats.
No, there'll be no storage of power boats.
no, but
How about the chase boats or the
Launches.
launches?
Yeah.
They'll probably be on site, yes.
Yeah.
They're much smaller.
We understand this is.
This is Dave Dickinson, who is the president of Row America, and he's in a better position since he's operating these in many
but the-
locations to tell that.
the boats
to you.
are going to be stored on the site in the
They
winter.
probably will be, we have a main site in Bridgeport. They'll be taking the rowing shells themselves.
Will all be removed?
Will be removed, taken back to Bridgeport.
Storage.
Yes, and I suspect that the coach boats, which are 16 feet long, probably 6 feet wide, and 5 feet tall, will remain there. So substantially smaller than the current yachts that get stored there.
And how many of the
First year,
coach boats?
probably 3, 4 at most. It's going to be a very slow and small program this fall.
Where are the restrooms, showers, ADA compliance?
Right now, it's just porta potties, as we get going. That's pretty much how we start most of our programs. As far as the ADA compliance, that will be probably part of phase 2 and 3, making sure that they, as it gets formed into a true rowing center, it meets all of that. And sorry, what was your third question? There was showers. Showers. There is no showers, and really, I would say 1 out of 20 rowing clubs actually have showers for the folks. Majority of the kids actually show up after school, and majority of the programming is kids. It's after school, they show up, they go home, they shower there.
What's your timetable?
Starting for just after Labor Day.
So the boat storage I was talking about is traditional commercial boat storage, put the white things over the top, and that's what I would like to be clear.
There will
is
be
not.
there will be none of that.
Yeah, so you're actually eliminating, at least for this phase, those activities. The old docks, the commercial boat storage, and the utilization of buildings for what they are presently used for. Is that a fair statement?
For the retail and the residential, yes.
The other building?
The building in the center, which is a two-story building, had been used as the offices for the marina.
Yes.
And we probably will use them just as they are. And there is also storage underneath, where we would have life preservers and oars, and we'd probably store them there.
And will that be used as offices for the rowing club, not for offices to rent out to some third
No,
party?
exclusively for the rowing club.
Good.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
There's not going to, those offices aren't going to be rented?
No.
There, see, there.
So all of those uses, well, that's the only other use. Because the retail, you said, is gone and the residential is gone, so that the office building is going to be used totally for the rowing club?
Correct.
Oh, no third party?
No.
So I had a couple of just simple safety issues. I think that.
But I'm sorry, just a second. Wouldn't there be bathrooms and so forth in that office building to be used?
There are bathrooms there, not in the best condition, but the thought was for the people participating in the rowing, it would just be the porta potties that would be used.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That building that used to be Fjord Fisheries.
Yes.
Is in, I think, a pretty deteriorated state. Is it safe to simply have people around that building at this point?
I did go over and look at it today. It's boarded up.
Right.
It
Okay.
doesn't look like it's sagging
No,
in any
but-
location. I can tell you that by the fall, we will be coming in with a plan that will either
Do something.
renovate that building for some other use
Right.
other than retail and residential, or we'll be proposing to tear it down.
Okay, and I think the only other thing that was mentioned in one of the reports, our reports, was the bulkhead is deteriorated down on the shore. Will that be, I don't know, people kept away from it, something so that it's not a danger? That's all I'm concerned about.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that was not part of your deep permit?
No, our focus for the COP was just to be able to have the dock that's appropriate for rowing and a new ramp.
So for Phase 2, I think your site plan has to come up to standards.
Come back to us.
Come back to us, including the boardwalk connecting the properties as required in the waterfront.
I thought that might come up, so I did bring.
Surprise, surprise.
Did you have your handy spy there? Yes.
Well, it is very informative to sit in on Monday afternoons. This is.
When you have someone to whom you can delegate it.
That's very true, and I appreciate the ability to do that. This is the plan that we submitted as part of the Brunswick and Greenwich Academy boathouse and rowing facility. And what it shows is what was approved by you as the public access for this the property we're talking about now, which is 6 feet wide and comes down the south side of the property and then along shore and then ties in to the Brunswick property. And we would include that as part of Phase 2.
Now, if you don't come back for Phase 2, though, because...
Then I think we're going to have a very, very small club.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how far, porta potties are going to go to create a club atmosphere.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them like that,
How
though.
many,
Mr. Hageby.
taking that thought further, how many, under Phase 1, what's the maximum number of members?
What I indicated after reviewing it with my client was that we thought we would have an initial adult group of approximately 25 and of the juniors 50 to 75.
And you feel you can operate those many members with no facilities?
I'll ask Dave Dickinson to address that.
Sure, absolutely. That's not all at once, so that's actually split up into multiple times, so through the day, so absolutely. Do it all the time. The site in this configure could do a couple hundred people easily if, unfortunately, in lesser circumstances have done that. But the idea here is just to immediately get into the Phase 2 approval as we get started this fall.
Mr. Hagney, I'm sorry, how many boats do you think will be on the property?
I'm going to ask Mr. Dickinson to address that again.
Sure, I'll just stand here.
Initially.
Again, to handle up to, probably 50 people, of which there'd be 4 8s, maybe four four-person boats. So there's 8, so approximately 12 to 15 boats total.
And so they will be dry docked and outside?
Yes.
Do you have to worry about security? Do you have to?
Not so much. It's amazing. No one really.
Wants a boat?
Sorry?
Nobody wants your boats?
No, exactly. It's amazing how we've placed these things in some pretty crime-ridden areas, and no one really touches them. So the idea is to actually put A-frames out, secure them very, very well for wind, and out of the way. Actually, you don't necessarily see them from the road by what I saw from the map, and usually sight unseen. Big thing is the coach boats and engines. That's what you really find go missing. In a rowing club.
And for 70 juniors, how many coaches on site at each time?
What we do is we have ratios, very strict ratios. So if it's a new team, new to the sport, it would be a one-on-one situation. So it would be a maximum of 1 to 9 if that coach was out with an 8. If they're out with a quad, for instance, it would be a 1 to 4. And then as they approve, it can go up to a 1 to 18, which is, a maximum of 2 boats. So for instance, 2 8s going side by side. One coach with experienced crews can handle that easily.
Okay.
So why can't you put the public access in now? Is that because it conflicts with those parking spaces, and when you come in with Phase 2, those spaces will be in a new location? Because I'm just not sure why it couldn't be added now. You have the plan and everything.
We weren't planning on doing any site work at all. I suppose we could certainly...
At least provide the easement, at least.
We could certainly provide the easement. But since we weren't planning on doing any site work as part of this, I didn't think it was appropriate as part of Phase 1. I suppose we could demarcate it on the site with lines.
The question, getting underway right after Labor Day, he's not going to have any site work.
The question is, what do we do if you don't come back for Phase 2? And then what do we do for public access? What do we do for appropriate parking, et cetera?
Could we give them a time frame
I think if you're willing to at least do the easement, I mean, as opposed to actually constructing a boardwalk, but at least providing the easement is, I think, that way at least people can walk along the property and it's, along that, even if it was painted or something along those lines, as opposed to constructing the actual boardwalk at this point. But
I don't see why we can't do that. I just hadn't included it as part of this phase because we weren't doing site work. So certainly we can do the easement, and certainly we can identify and demarcate it and sign it so that people are aware that it's there.
And then just from a legal standpoint, how are you actually getting rid of those other uses on the property? So the Fjord Fisheries building, I understand, is in disrepair and it's boarded up, but it's not condemned at this point, right?
Is it condemned? We couldn't remember yesterday. I had an idea that it had been condemned after Sandy.
Well, the uses are discontinued, so he's.
Yeah, but whether
By
the
virtue of him
building's
just stating that?
Well, by
Yes,
virtue of
and
it.
he'd have to come back to
Okay.
have a use.
Okay.
If you state uncategorically that you are abandoning a use, as we are saying here, then you cannot bring that use back
You're not
without.
abandoning the use, you're abandoning the tenants. The tenants are gone and going to be.
No, I'm abandoning
use.
that use.
He's
The
abandoning the use
residential and the
for
retail.
us. Because it's, some of
No,
those
no,
are,
he's doing
he's
the use
abandoning the use.
Except for the office.
For this building.
Yeah.
That building.
For that building.
You're- oh, okay, I'm
Which is
sorry.
the residential and the retail, we abandon, we
So as part of the
Abandon
phase
that
one, you presumably have no issue with noting that on the plan?
Confirming
that-
the abandonment, that's
Right,
what
but
he's
I think it needs to be noted on the plan, because 10 years could go by and someone could
And
want to go into
under
the...
the law, it has to be willfully abandoned.
Right, it has to be stated. It has to-
Purposefully abandoned, and then it terminates it. Yeah.
It has to just be stated.
certainly you could
not-
include that as a whereas and make it
Yeah,
a
yeah.
condition
Right.
for a notation on the plan.
Right,
But I think you make a good point on a timetable, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah, what do you,
You have to
Sal,
give
how
us
do
a
you- yeah, so do
timetable for the
easement.
3 phases.
For Phase 2, we plan to come back to you in the fall with a plan showing how we're going to lay out the parking, whether how we're going to renovate Building 1 as offices and facilities
Okay.
for the club. And then in the spring, we would come back with Phase 3.
Any other comments?
Yes, yes.
People-
You're going to line this parking lot in some manner right now, aren't you, so that there's not chaos? I mean, when you have kids arriving after school and
that-
mothers?
I think that's a very good point. What we want to have is circulation, and if you've been to the site, you realize there's a rise in the road going south, and this is a good point for entry. It's not a good point for exit.
Yep.
On the other hand, the northerly curb cut, it has great sight lines and is level and is where you want to be coming out. So we would indicate that it's one way, and then we would stripe the parking lots.
Okay, and the last question is merger. When is that going to
Oh,
take place?
goodness.
It's been promised several times and put in several site plans, and we've still got 3 lots.
And that's true. And I asked my client about that. And it's going to be treated as one lot, and we're happy to provide a consolidation map and can do that also as part of the Phase 1.
Title is going to be merged in some manner?
Yes, it will be merged into one entity,
Okay,
and we will record a consolidation map
Okay.
combining the 3 parcels
okay, and
into
that's going
one.
to be part of this approval?
We can do that as part of Phase 1, yes.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Hegney, I gotta ask you this. Sandy's,
The fruit stand.
the fruit stand. mean,
I
it
asked
kind
my client about that, too, and we were leaving it because we thought everyone wanted us to
No,
leave it.
yeah.
If you don't want us to leave it, then it won't be there.
That's kind of the thing, is that we realize that it's never been approved, or we think it hasn't, but it's there, and it's a neighborhood institution. I don't know what happens with the parking, because people pull in and park right in front of Sandy's, and does that, and how long are you planning on? I mean, I think we have to ask you, but, I mean, and I recognize it's not a water-dependent use, so I was really hesitating.
It is less than 750 square feet.
And
I mean,
you do
it's
want to know where you can walk to get your vegetables if it's not
Yeah,
there?
I mean, I think it's a neighborhood institution is the problem, and I think it's sort of, so with all those caveats, what's,
Our intent was to leave it here as part of Phase 1 and make the determination as to whether it would remain or go as part of Phase 2. That was our plan, but we're,
I'm sorry.
if
Katie,
you
go
tell
ahead
us it
and
has to
mutter out
go, then
loud.
it goes.
I'm sorry, what section of the regulation are you proposing that Sandy's farm stand would
It's
remain
related to
under?
the rowers'
Retail.
need for bananas.
It's their existing retail on site.
It's,
That's what Andy says.
Don't specify the kind of
it's
fruit.
almost in the nature of a food truck, which,
Well, and here's the other thing.
rather than a,
Fjord had a retail operation on the site. Now, see, that's, if you don't abandon retail on the site. I'm
Well,
just,
he does have a special permit, so if this was considered proposed activity accessory or subordinate or provides supportive services to water-dependent use, and it's an outdoor dining facility between a restaurant, and it qualifies it as ancillary and contiguous to an eating establishment, restaurant or retail food establishment operating on a seasonal basis.
where are you reading from?
There's also, use group B, there's also food service other than drive-ins having no more than 750 square feet, that's why I was mentioning the 750,
So we'd kind of be okay?
when clearly subordinate and incidental to water-dependent use.
I think Mr. Hegney's intent of making this decision for Phase 2 is actually, I think, kind of critical. It would have to be incorporated into what's happening with that existing building, the parking, the facilities.
So for now, we leave it.
I think we
Just don't
forget
ask
it.
the question.
I think we forget it for now.
We unask the question,
Okay.
or what?
Any more comments, people?
Go
any
ahead.
comments
I'm
from the
sorry, hold on a
public?
second.
Okay.
Katie, go ahead, what?
No, I'm just asking Mr. Hegney if that's the section he's coming under.
Yes,
I think that section would cover this particular use.
Okay.
One
Comments?
more-
Did you want to talk?
One more question. Mr. Hegney, do you have a survey that shows the dimensions of those parking spaces?
I don't, but I can certainly provide that.
Okay, that,
We're
and then also-
anticipating making them conforming to
Okay,
the
and then
current regulations.
the travel width, the aisle width for the travel lanes, that will be provided on that survey too?
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, so coming back to Sandy's, what Mr. Hegney represented is that it would be consistent with the WB zone intent and the regulation, and that if you when you come forward with Phase 2, you would then provide the support for, if it was to continue, you would provide the support of how, on that basis. Is that good?
Yes,
You would document that, if you will.
yes, we would.
Fine.
Okay, good.
Good evening, Peter Quigley. It's a very admirable use of the water, water-dependent use. I have a question, though. As we finish off the harbor plan, and a request again to have someone from this commission and department visit the Harbor Commission. There's a major section on coastal site applications, which means these applications come in front of the Harbor Commission once this plan has been drafted, and hopefully by September, to keep you up to date, and hopefully approved by next year. My question, first of all, is public access. The questions were asked were very well stated tonight, and it's a very admirable use, I think, of water-dependent business. The issue is public access, keeping public access, but also the word abandoned makes me very nervous for those boaters that had boats in that dock space. So the question I have, and to retain the future use of that dock space, should this enterprise not quite make it in the future?
It's only if it's a non-conforming use, is that abandonment an important thing? A conforming use can go into the zone.
So it remains basically...
Yeah, what we were happy about was getting rid of any non-conforming uses because that means that they go away forever.
Because
And-
we don't
and you
want
go-
that, we don't want that to happen with the
and you
dock
keep
space.
it-
We're already losing a lot of dock space.
Yeah, and we're
in this
trying to
area.
keep it as water dependent as we can.
Cool.
We're trying to follow the regulation. I know it's surprising, but
No, and,
We're on
and,
it.
and honestly, the Harbor Management Commission's new. There's not a lot of cross-communication going on, and I think clearly there has to be.
Bob, you just said it.
There has to be, because you were there, I guess, Andy, weren't you?
You make a very good point.
So, in any case, thank you very much.
Well, apparently Donald's over to
Who else
taking
wants,
care of it.
anybody else? Okay, can we close, people?
Actually, just along Mr. Quigley's lines, I did actually contact Mr. Siciliano, who's the Director of Parks and Recreation. I was asking him about the dredging schedule for this area, because, with more boating and whatever as it relates to the harbor, I was curious. And he had mentioned that it is scheduled for October 2016, I think he had told me. Note that.
Thank you. Thank you, we'll close. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, people. Final site plan and special permit, 259 Millbank Avenue and 261 and 263 Millbank.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Heller. For the record, John Tessie representing the applicants, the three companies. Also in attendance are Peter Finkbeiner, our site engineer, and Mr. Rydberg, Rudy Rydberg, the project architect. As you all know, we were last before you in May 5th with respect to this application. And at that meeting, we left with directive from the commission to address
Come up to your,
directive from the commission to address 5 issues as pointed out in the staff report by Mark. And in his staff report, he notes our general compliance, or specific compliance with the conditions you wanted us to address with respect to both our architectural plans and our site plan, which I'm happy to take you through if you'd like me to, but I think you're all aware of what we've done in terms of excluding the right-of-way to the rear or to the east side of the property, revised our architectural plans as requested, reduced our FAR, addressed, I believe, the outstanding height issue, did some reduction of our bulkhead for the elevator. Also, Mr. Rydberg attended, again, as I believe you all know, and as indicated in the staff report, the ARC meeting in the meantime to secure, at this level, a conceptual approval of the project.
When did you get that approval? When did you get that approval?
The approval date was, it's here in the staff report.
Well, it was subsequent, the one we had in the staff report, I think, was last year, 9/3/14.
Last year's is September 3rd, but,
I thought it was
May 6th.
May 6th.
right, it was earlier, right. Which happened to be the day after we appeared before you last time. But it took a while to bring the plans up to the condition that you were looking for.
I saw the drawing that got submitted here. I think there was something lost in the translation of what I said at the briefing yesterday, and that had to do with the exit stair from the garage in the southwest corner of building, I think it's the south building. It's shown on the architect's no, the southeast corner.
Southeast, it's here.
Southeast corner. Yeah, but there's an exit coming from the garage on Rudy's plans. On the garage plan, when you get to the first floor, it's not shown, and it wasn't shown on the site plan, and the reason that it's kind of important is that you're so very, very close in both of those to the maximum, so I just...
Right, did you see the...
I saw what it was, but it did not address this issue.
The plan that was submitted yesterday by Mr.
Yeah, it did not address the,
Finkbeiner.
I think somebody got it either confused with the entranceway to the garage as opposed to this stairway. Maybe Rudy knows what.
For the record, Rudy Rydberg, it's kind of funny, we always make jokes about
drawings, missing lines and so on. And unfortunately now with the computers, it put on a no-plot layer, and that's the honest reason. And I actually, when I was looking at the plan today, just to go through it, that the exit stair that you're referencing. is- Don't blame the computer. No, I'm laughing because No. I'm using that like the dog ate the It was your papers. fault. You did it the human way, and We that did. was the problem. No, you We blame don't it on ever the blame a computers. computer in front of Richard. But, no, in all seriousness, the FAR is, if you look on our worksheets, it shows the FAR counting that space, but the
Yeah,
plan
yeah.
doesn't show it on the architecturals.
See, it wouldn't be normally counted in FAR because you're in the garage. and
Right,
you're
but on the
exempt.
first floor, there is still area, and it's there. If you look on our worksheets, I can show you the worksheets if you want to. But I'll pass this.
No, as long as it got put on the
It is
drawing.
in there,
Like
and
I
it is
say,
in building
you're
coverage.
built, well, you were, you didn't have any spare room in building coverage.
Right, but we did take everything into account, and we can, I think maybe in.
So
dealing with
everything's in
this-
that?
Yes, we
Okay.
counted for FAR and FAR worksheets, and the building coverage has all worked with Peter. So we can confirm that with staff, assuming that we get
But
approval.
including, but, so it isn't closed all the way up and
It goes
exits?
one story.
One story,
above
garage to
grade,
out.
so that's, and
Yeah.
then it stops. And you can, if I'll just pass this.
But I'm sure that the only other thought I had was if it does miss the parking. In other words, the parking
Yes.
gets pretty close.
Yes, yes. If you look at this plan right here.
Yep.
I'll just pass it there.
Oh.
There it is there.
Oh, boy, it
And
does get close, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was as close as it was before. It was about 3-4 feet off of the landscape wall at that point. But it all fits and it all works, and we will clarify that also with the landscape architecture plans for ARC.
Okay, well, this is not, obviously, this isn't shown on the site plan.
That is not on the landscape architect site plan. We will adjust that. We have not
Coordinate
adjusted
that,
that
so,
yet.
okay.
Yep, we will do that. That plan also, just for reference, in case we bring it up, because you have it in your hand, was there was a discussion at ARC about possibly having some kind of stair from the upper level to Millbank Avenue for tenants to walk down. We have shown it would work. It would not affect our grade plane because we're already taking the lower dimension on the driveway.
Right.
We're going to look at it. When we go back to ARC, I think it's a cumbersome stair. It's big, it's large, and we really can't work it in as well, but we'll work that out with ARC and then subsequently show it to
Better off
staff.
putting it up the other side where it's.
The problem with the other side is that it then will be in our grade plane walls, and that will then affect our grade plane. And we, so we've looked at it, and it was brought up at sort of like the 11th hour of ARC that night, and we said, well, we'll take a look at it, so.
So there still is adequate, there's still the 20 feet or 24 feet or whatever it takes between that wall and the curb.
Yes,
to get
yes,
in the
everything
garage.
still works, and it doesn't really go into our drive path at all.
Okay.
We still had an area, we had about a 5 or 6 foot area that we could put that in.
You could put it in, but that actually is not even an AR, per se, it's not even an AR, it's not even an ARC issue per se, because it has nothing to do with the aesthetics.
Right.
It's the functionality that they thought it was, they're making like a site plan comment.
Correct.
We think your site works better with the stairway.
I had just one comment, which was, I thought, I was expecting not to have good consequences from our comments, and I thought you did. You listened to us and made a lot of important changes, and I appreciate that cooperativeness rather than the, oh, no, we're doing this the third time.
I told you when we left the
appreciate it.
meeting we were going to do it.
Well-
and for the most part, I'm a man of my word.
Let me ask-
Anyway, I thank you.
Thank you.
As to that point, you had, no, it's not bad. Maybe a little bit. The elevator, you did somewhere between 3 and 5 feet you took out of the height,
Yes.
and you're now going to tell us how you did that.
Well, you've got something.
I didn't respond just yet, but I will. I have, again, another section.
It's because you let John take.
Is that better?
No.
Oh, no, it is, you have to wait a second.
It takes a minute to, okay. It's sort of like a 5-second delay on TV? Okay.
Yeah.
So what we've done.
Do you have any
as-
other copies of that?
Oh, yeah, I have plenty of those.
Why don't
yeah,
you give it
sorry.
out to the other?
Yeah.
particularly-
Yeah, I think there's 6 in there, so if you can share with Nick and Ms. Raymer as well, Peter. Thank you.
Please save me one for the record. In starting to do a little bit more development of the drawings, let me pass these down, is that we've added we've reviewed the elevator a little bit more, so we've reduced it down to about a 10-foot height, where we had 13 feet. We started that with a commercial elevator, which tends to have a higher overrun. So by going to a more high-end residential unit, or a little bit, we want one that works fast. When we've done other buildings, the first bit of residential elevators came out, were actually slow, terribly slow. And that's been a lot of feedback from clients we've had. They said, is there any of that are out there? So I just did a house, and Otis makes one that's really quite nice, has some speed to it and some capacity. So that's why we've dropped that height there now. So I think it started, probably we gained about 5 feet over the time, because we also dropped the building height a little bit on this, also in reference to your comments.
So just a commercial one would have left you with that 5 foot.
Yeah, you normally need almost 14 feet of clearance from a floor to the underside of what they call the hoistway elevator.
Double checking our data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only other comment I had was just the height of the stairway.
We're good.
Of the stair itself?
Yeah.
It's lower than the elevator. I'd have to look at my architectural. Do you want it lower? Okay.
Little.
Well, I think we probably have a 10-foot ceiling in that stair tower. We could probably get it to 9 in the tower, because we have a landing up there that takes us to the roof deck.
But your top of your elevator is at 11, so what difference
Right, so
does it make?
Closer to the edge. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. We've also, as you see, we've moved that in.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
And in changing the building, we've
I'm like, it's up there.
shouted up the width of the building, or length, however, some people call it the other way, but I think
Okay,
we've...
I think that, it's just,
I'll take a look at it in the
If
final
there's a way
CDs,
to-
and we can deal with staff on that, too.
no problem.
Any comments? Anybody? Comments, anybody?
Let me just see. I think
Merger.
that's the only one I
Merger.
had.
Yes, we will we will need to have this all combined into one ownership.
Exactly.
It's a little tricky because of just the way it's part of the client's
Any final comments?
estate plan, financial planning. What will happen is we will do cross conveyances, and the property will be owned by 2 of the entities as tenants in common, like a husband and wife.
Yeah.
So, but it'll all be under one ownership by 2 of the LLCs.
Okay.
We will. That could
Any
be a
comments from
condition
the
of approval.
public?
Wait a minute, so,
Anything else?
The ownership of the property itself is going to wind up being in 2 of the 3 companies that own 3 separate parcels.
right, but there'll be a parent company of
There'll be,
those.
there'll be 2 companies, just like a husband and wife. There'll be co-owners of the property and tenants in common.
Right, but there'll be one zoning lot, though, is
There'll be
the-
one zoning lot.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
owned by 2.
One
We're just gonna
property
do-
description.
We're just going to do cross deeds, and that's for estate planning.
Right,
purposes.
but the key thing is there will be one zoning lot.
One zoning lot, one tax lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll close. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Oh, I just give this to the record. There was a question about the green sheet, which is actually coming, but this is an email from Wetlands saying it's coming. So I'll just give it to staff.
It's in the mail.
Okay. Final coastal site plan and special permit, 58 Club Road.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. This is a 1 acre zone, 1 acre lot in the R20 zone on Club Road. We are preparing to construct a new house. The existing house has been demolished. We've received clearance from the engineering department. There was a question about the rain garden in the front being shown as lawn, and I reviewed that with Mr. DeAndrea, and the a rain garden can function with the lawn as long as it is properly designed with a sand filter below the grass. So that is not an inconsistency between Mr. DeAndrea's plan and the landscape plan. We meet all of the zoning criteria. We're some 500 square feet under what would be permitted under the floor area ratio, and we would ask for your approval.
Couple of questions. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a discharge of a pipe. It appears to discharge and go across someone else's property. Can you talk about that?
No, but I know someone who can, and I did bring this to his attention, and I'd like Mr. DeAndrea to address that.
And I did talk to Scott Marucci today. We can talk about that when he's...
Tony DeAndrea, representing the applicants and working with Mr. Hegney. It was no surprise to me that the pipe was there because I was fully involved with the design. What we're allowed to do with the drainage analysis is to maintain existing conditions, peak rates of flow.
Right.
One of the unique aspects of this piece of property, and the reason we're very intimately aware of it, is that we've been working for several months on the property next door, which has actually been submitted for review by
Lots
staff.
of next doors, right? Left,
I'm sorry, which is to the west, the east, excuse me, is known on the plan as the Delgado property. Up to the top of the page, and as you look at
You're
it.
going to discharge on their property.
This particular property currently discharges onto that property.
But you can't increase the amount of flow.
We cannot increase that rate, yes, sir.
Okay.
And what we've done in the design for the property adjacent to the east is that we've intercepted all of that runoff, because under our drainage manual, we're allowed to bypass the natural flow or retain it on the property and treat it. So in our many discussions with not only DPW, but with our colleagues under a peer review representing the private association adjacent, we've worked out a plan whereby that water is intercepted, carried around the Delgado property in conjunction with the development of the Delgado property, on which is their own set of detention and water quality elements. So similarly, in this case, we've taken the majority of the runoff, matching the same drainage patterns, bringing the water to the west side toward Club Road because of the scarcity of drainage system on Club Road, although the town has recently added a catch basin to address a low point in front of a property 2 parcels to the south. Regardless, we've designed this so that we detain the water under the 25-year storm, treat it for water quality and retention as required by our current drainage manual. So when you look at the original topography, you see that the majority of the drainage path is to the west. I dug the holes myself. There are good elements of gravel in this southwest corner, so it was appropriate to bring the water down into that corner and retain it and infiltrate it. And that's the way the system's designed. The system, when you look at it closely, is a series of galleries spread out through the site. We take the whole roof, and
What is that pipe? What is that taking away? The one that's going to the east?
Just a small piece of the roof. You'll also notice that on the northeast corner, again, part of our drainage manual is to disconnect.
Right.
And they want us to disconnect, put water back on the surface. So if you can discharge a certain rate toward and volume toward the eastern side, part of the preference is to discharge over the surface. So we've done that. This system on the adjacent property that we've designed, there are, I believe, if I recall correctly, there's 4 locations where we're intercepting water from not only this property, but the O'Brien property and other pieces. So it's just our obligation to pick them up. We recognize that they're there. They've been incorporated. They're no greater intensity going to the east than what's already being directed to that side.
Well, the difference is only that going to the east now, it's like sheet flow. This one is a more concentrated one, even though I know you're going to the level spread.
But it's also being discharged at a location where it is actually the low point. The test holes that were done in the east side prove that it's all muck and clay. It's not good soil. So we've identified where it has been concentrating and we picked it up at that location, and that's where you'll see, or somebody will see, the catch basins on the other property to protect against it.
One of the comments from Conservation, I think it was her first comment regarding the amount of fill
Yep,
on the site.
and the grading.
And I was just sort of curious when I read that, and I think on this site, you're showing almost 14,000 yards of fill. And it was curious to me because on the whole of the Palmer Hill site, you only have like 9,800 yards.
8,200, right.
So this is a 1-acre
correct.
site, Palmer Hill was 10 acres.
It was 8,200 cubic yards, plus or minus.
On Palmer Hill?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I said 9.
Explain.
I don't know, it's,
Once again, it's a recognition that the architect and the landscape architect developed, and we engineered the site after they designed the concept. But once again, the building is up at the top of the knoll, and the back is a significant drop. It's just the nature of the beast.
I understand that the.
No.
10-foot difference from the very back to where the...
Yeah, but it goes to exist, I understand that, it's coming out almost at the existing grade.
No, with the existing house or the initial knoll is closer to the front door. And I would say, based on my experience in walking the lot, the entire house is being filled.
I won't disagree with that. The existing ground in the back of the property on the east side is 30.5. The existing garage on that lower level of the existing dwelling is 33.
Right.
The property in the front, however, is elevation, let me just pick out an actual elevation, a 40.
40,
And it continues to rise as you move further east. I'm looking for the first floor. There it is. First floor, 42 on the existing dwelling. So we have a significant drop from the existing dwelling to the east side.
Right, I'm aware of that, I'm just curious, how, did you miscalculate the fill or something? It seems like a lot when you think
Oh,
about the way the
we'll certainly
site.
double check everything, of course, but I believe that was right. Maybe we did. We'll check it, Mr. Maitland, for sure. But it seems to me that there's a big volume.
Like I say, I think you did incorporate, in other words, at least the flow of the site as it does, as you say, hits 40, and then goes up to 42 or whatever it was on the existing house, and then drops to the east.
Well, she's got that more than 90% of the site.
Well, the site's being reworked considerably, yes.
Totally.
Absolutely,
Now-
it is.
She talked about saving one European birch,
Yeah,
and I
that-
couldn't find that on the
It's
site.
on the right front, and they are saving
That's
it.
no, that's a maple.
Oh, that's the maple.
She said there's a European beech. There's a twin beech.
There is a large beach on the northerly side adjacent to the existing driveway. From my experience, and I know this for a fact, the beech tree will die no matter what you do on this site or any other site. As soon as there's any construction in the vicinity of the canopy, it will die. And in this particular property, from day one, we recognized that the beech tree was in jeopardy no matter what's being done on the property.
What about additional plantings? Because
Well, we have an initial landscaping plan, and I find that as the site is being developed, that is augmented oftentimes considerably from what's initially developed by the landscape architect. And I would expect that would happen here as well.
You did not submit a landscape plan, did you?
Thought we had.
I didn't
Oh, yes,
find
you
it.
did.
Oh, you did?
Yes, we did.
There's one in there.
Oh, sorry.
I outlined the trees.
Mr. Hagney, how many volume special permits have you worked on in an R20? An R1?
A number of them in the RA1, not so many in the R20. And frankly, there isn't an awful lot of land in town that's zoned R20 in comparison to R12 and 1 acre and 2 acre. And frankly, when I first saw this, and it's 9,400 square feet, I didn't think that it was going to be a special permit application. But when the staff asked us to do the calculation after we had submitted it as a administrative coastal site plan, and it turned out that it was more than 150,000 cubic feet. I think it's a factor, really, that it's a double-sized lot. We have a 1-acre lot in the R20 zone.
Yeah, because it's pretty much wall-to-wall.
Well, and that allows you to almost get 40% more FAR
Absolutely.
than an RA1.
Yep.
I would add, we did look at some of the other properties in the area that are of similar size or larger. At 64, it's a 39,800 square foot lot. The house is 6,550 square feet. 67 Club Road is 47,900 square feet with a 7,200 square foot house. 73 Club Road is 114,000 square feet, but the house is 14,500 square feet. 74 Club Road is 95,000 square foot lot, a 12,000 square foot house, and 95 is a 42,000 square foot lot with an 11,000 square foot house. So I think some neighborhoods are developing in certain areas, and I think Club Road is one of those that's developing in this fashion.
Okay.
There just are some tops and bottoms of walls that are missing, but I think the CEO commented on that.
Yeah, he did, and there was one comment, and I looked at our grade plane analysis, and I'm not sure he's picking up that that in that one area, K, of the grade plane analysis, there's actually a stair there that is
You'll deal
going
with
down.
that.
But we'll go over that with the CEO.
My curiosity got the better of me, but can you tell me how what happens when the car elevator is down low? What is there a protection or a rail or something that?
Actually, I thought that there might be a question on that, and we actually brought literature on it. What happens is there are essentially two floors on this lift.
Yeah.
It's not an elevator. The state calls them lifts, so you don't need a state permit as an elevator. And it comes up, and you drive the car that's going to be in the lower level in, and then it goes down, and you can drive in on the.
You can only
then
drive in at
becomes
the
the
upper, you
floor.
can't drive in on the lower level. How do you drive in?
Let me show you. This is the diagram for it. And we actually did one on Indian Field Road a couple of years ago, where there was a lower level basement that the elevator, the lift, excuse me,
Yeah.
went down.
They learned how to do it in an aircraft carrier.
Yes, that's true.
I was just concerned, is that there is a safety, is there a railing or something that goes up in there just to, when the lift is down?
No, when the
What stops
lift.
somebody from falling into it?
When the lift is down, there's either a car there or
Fall on top
there's
of
the
it, you
floor.
trip. Yeah.
It's a floor.
No, when it comes down, the lift has a ceiling.
I see, so the ceiling becomes the floor.
The ceiling becomes the floor, and then you just drive onto that ceiling as if it's the garage floor. That's how it works.
Okay? Any other comments?
How does that deed, did you take a look at the deed? How that works, that deed restriction on the easement in the front, that easement in the front? Bob Seal? In the front, well, you probably know. Well, you've got it on the, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make a lot of noise. It says there's a 100-foot easement restriction.
Can you hear the question, sorry?
Well, I was just wondering what that was. 100. There's a 100-foot easement restriction on the front. I was just looking at it in the landscape plan.
Yeah, on the original.
I can give you back the landscape plan so you can see where it is. What? Oh, yes. I can't give it back, it's Richard's.
That's 100.
Go all the way
Well,
from.
I would point out that our front yard setback is 170.
Yeah, I know, and I'm asking why you have to do that, because it looks like you have a restriction of 100 feet. That's what you put on the landscape plan. Here. I'm gonna hand you this. It's gonna hit your mic, which is on. And everybody's gonna hate you for that. No, I'm letting you look at this. See
Yeah,
what-
I think if your question is
Like,
why we're developing this lot in this fashion, it's
No,
because
but what is that
of how
easement?
it opens up in the
No, but
rear.
what's that easement restriction per the deed? I'm just curious why it is labeled that way. You're not answering my question. You're answering-
I cannot provide you with an answer on that. I'm not sure. But I would add that there is nothing that we're proposing here that would affect that.
Curious, yeah. Well, I guess what I'm asking is, since there's so much manipulation, are you restricted at all in what you can do in that easement?
Not having the language in front of me, it's difficult to say, but I would add that, as have all of the rest of the properties on that side of Club Road been developed, they're all doing it in a similar fashion,
Only yours is bigger.
including 74, which is under construction now.
Yeah, thought.
Okay?
Oh, and by the way, you have it closed off, so people can't go look at it.
Anybody want to say, anybody else?
It's just a sawhorse.
Mr. Hegney, can you give us just an explanation of why the site manipulation? I mean, I'd just like to make a record of what is the reason.
Tony tried.
Well, I think Tony was going over that earlier. It's house location, it's the need to provide proper drainage and storage on site, and to site the house roughly where the house had been sited before it was removed, at a similar elevation, and to provide for that drainage coming to the west, to provide for that water treatment and water storage in the rain garden on the westerly side of the property.
Well, when Ms. Mock says the front yard doesn't need a rain garden, and it could be eliminated, and then you would not have the manipulation in the front yard, do you think that that's correct?
No, I do not. And Tony had pointed out on the easterly side of the property, the soils are very poor, and we're required to provide for...
The west side. I mean, the front yard is the
Right,
west side.
On the east side, the soils
Yep.
are very poor.
Yes.
And we don't want to create any greater discharge in that area. So in order to provide for the storage and for water quality treatment, we have all of that concentrating on the westerly side of the property. And that's to meet the requirements of the town's drainage manual. And I take the point that there is conflict between what conservation would like and what engineering would like.
And what I think are considered modern practices. I mean, site disturbances as little as possible, land left in its natural state as much as possible. Isn't that
I'm not
correct?
sure that the low-impact development focus that engineering is looking to accomplish is actually achieving that goal at this point. I think that needs to be looked at again.
I agree.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
comments from the public? Can we close, people?
Is this wall grade plane?
We all set to close?
Hold on just a second, Donald. Andy
Yes.
and Richard are talking about something.
It is.
It is. It
And
is.
it
grade
can't
plane.
be on the property line.
It can.
I thought you couldn't even have a grade plane wall on the property line.
You
It had to
can.
be-
We discussed that yesterday.
What's the 5-foot setback?
There's no 5-foot setback.
It's in between them, in between Great
If you were terracing it, you had 2, then it's 5 feet in, 5 feet.
Right.
That's 5 feet. If it wasn't a grade plane wall, it could be 6 feet high. But if it's a grade plane wall, it can only be 5.
Any problems, guys? Do you have any problems with the application?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit stuck on that easement thing, only because you've got some development forward of, you've got the rain garden in that no develop area, and I'm just curious what the language is that prohibits you from developing in that area.
Well, the rain garden itself is not a structure. You obviously have to develop the property. You need a driveway to get to the rest of your lot.
I can't tell that it's about structures. It just says easement.
But
It says 100-foot easement.
But I don't think it's anything this commission
but that is not something that
why are
the
we
commission
concerned?
itself applies as part of the public regulations. That's a private easement restriction. And
But I
that-
mean, the thing is, if they can't do what, if there's a private restriction that prohibits them from doing what they're doing, they'll have to be back here.
Then we'll be back to you. But I don't believe that that is the case. Just based on how I've seen the development on other properties on this side of Club Road.
Any comments from the public? Can we close, people? Anybody against closing?
I mean, we can get the deed and find out what it says, you know, before
But it's
we
still,
close.
it's a private deed, and we wouldn't, it doesn't impact our regulations.
Well,
Because Club Road's
If
just,
they can't develop it, if somebody comes and says, okay, I'm representing this neighborhood, you can't put that there because of the deed restriction, then they'll be back to us with a revised plan.
And the example I would also use is if there's a deed restriction on subdividing a property, and I come to the commission, and you say, well, there's a deed restriction, I say, well, I still meet all of your subdivision regulations, I think I'm due an approval, and you say yes, and then the neighbors decide they want to enforce that restriction, that's
I understand that,
that's
Mr.
their
Meany. Do you have
prerogative.
any objection to providing a copy of your deed to us? I mean, rather than my going down for it?
As a condition of approval, no.
Not, okay. Thank you.
gave you back your landscape plan.
Okay, we close.
Because I know you were going to hit me if I didn't.
Okay, next is Greenwich Country Day School,
Bye.
And I'm,
where Mr. Fox is recused.
So, Peter's sitting for himself.
And I've covered that at the beginning. You're on this now. And so is, okay.
Yeah, it's weird. That easement thing only shows up
On the
on a
landscaping plan, yeah.
It's not on the top. It's bizarre.
Yeah. It looks to me like it's probably some sort of.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Bruce Cohen, representing Greenwich Country Day. You'll remember opening this matter on at your hearing last month on the June the 30th. The two applications that are before you are, as I noted before, interrelated. The lot line revision, which is the first item, item number 7, is being proposed to allow Greenwich Country Day to acquire a quarter acre of property shown on the map. At this point, it's on the southeast corner of the property from an adjacent parcel. Since that hearing, there are several things that the commission asked us to do on this item. The first was to go to the ZBA to get a special exception approval, which we did, to allow that additional quarter-acre parcel to be used for nonprofit educational purposes, which is permitted in the zone on special exception. We've also determined, in response to an inquiry from the commission, that the property is in the sewer benefit area and has the right to connect to the town sanitary sewer. So that issue that in terms of the definition of re-subdivision, stating that you can eliminate a septic system or reserve area without qualifying as a re-subdivision, that doesn't present a problem. And finally, again, because the only reason that this is being done is to permit an addition, which I'll discuss with the next application. I'll point out to you what the staff notes, and that is that the school would make a condition of your confirmation or your approval of the next matter, the special permit approval, subject to the school actually acquiring the property by conveyance, presenting a map for consolidation to the commission, and recording it. And that is my presentation on the first matter.
I have one question for you.
Yep.
In the packet you gave us, are you aware of this with the purple lots? Can you tell me what the significance of that is?
The purple?
The purple. Because one of the purples is separating the parcel we're talking about from the main parcel. In other words,
Yeah.
now DeAndrea's map shows that.
This purple was acquired by the school in the
I know
past.
that. So this map was incorrect. It should not have been purple.
Well, the color's incorrect, but since there's no legend, then we don't know what it means anyway.
That's why I'm asking.
That's what it means.
So this was just, I think this was included to see if we're.
It was somebody who just
submit to
loved
us.
purple.
Yeah. Well, we do look at what you send us.
Well, that may be a good reason to take a look at this map. This is,
No, I did.
Yeah.
I understand that. I just wondered why we got the conflicting.
I apologize for the confusion.
Any comments on the application?
I have,
Comments?
Richard, are you done?
I am.
Mr. Cohen, I had a couple of small things. The ZBA approval was of a consolidation of the two lots, which I thought was a rather curious thing because my understanding is you're just seeking to get an approval of the use of the portion of the lot for education purposes.
No, it has to be consolidated. It's it's got to go to the main parcel because he needs it for the addition.
But the consolidation,
The language of the consolidation versus the use. I understand what you're saying, Ms. Ramey. The application that we made was very specific, and it was approved that evening.
oh, I know.
The way they've put it is that it be consolidated. Well, we couldn't consolidate it for the school use without getting that special exception, which we did.
No, I understand that, but first, you're not taking the whole lot and consolidating it at all. You're transferring a portion of it. So I found the
Well, the language in their action notice
Yes.
was to permit the consolidation of two parcels.
Yep.
What two parcels? You'd have to go behind, you'd have to look at the record to find out.
Right.
To go behind
It's-
the curtain.
It's not perfectly stated, but
Ask Gaz.
So the other question I have is, under 261.6C, doesn't this materially diminish the size of the lot that's the transferring property? I mean, it's a third of an acre? Isn't that a material alteration?
it's about a quarter of an acre, and it does not diminish it below 1.22 acres. In other words,
Now, that
we
I
have...
understand. But that isn't what the statute, the reg says,
No, you have to
materially
make...
diminishes.
You have to make a determination of what materiality
It's
is.
material.
In this case, we are not diminishing the lot below a buildable size lot. That lot as it remains, which is over here,
Yep.
complies in every aspect with the zoning regulations of the town. One could build a house on this property, connect to the sewer, and have a perfectly good house. So I believe that by eliminating .2, which is what we're eliminating of this parcel, we're taking it from an acre and a half.
No, you're taking .29.
We're taking 12,000 feet.
Yeah, it's .29 acres.
That's all. I mean, what's your negative consequence of a determination that its material diminishes, only that you have to, it gets called a re-subdivision. Is there any other
There's
consequence?
still an oversized lot in the 1 acre zone.
But is there any negative consequence to,
There's no negative zoning consequence, no.
Right.
It complies with every zoning requirement.
But it is material. You said 20% would be material.
I think that's all the questions I had.
What's that?
That's all the questions I had.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, we'll close.
The second item, Bruce Cohen again, representing the school, and this is on the final site plan special permit approval to allow a 2,000 square foot addition to the lower school. The lower school in this plan is at the south end of the campus. It's this kind of curved shaped building, and the addition is shown in yellow. As I indicated at your last hearing, the purpose of the addition is to enlarge classrooms for the second and third grade that now exist. In other words, no new classrooms will be added by virtue of this addition. It's simply to make all of the classrooms in the lower school the same size. This now will meet the size that pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade now enjoy. In addition, there'll be a deck attached to the front of the building to permit, when weather allows, outdoor classes to be held. Here's an aerial to show you a little better the area in which the addition is going to be constructed, and it's right along the eastern facade of the existing lower school.
We also did this section which shows the difference between Mercedes-Benz building and this, and the Mercedes-Benz building is actually 13 feet higher than the top of the parapet. Not sure I have that one here. But that was part of our submission to you before since the last hearing. I think that addresses the issues that
So they said
we had.
no new signs.
Correct, no new signs.
No new signs. Back half of the building wall will be the black trapezium panel and the parapet that you just discussed.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about what's happening on Edgewood? Are you putting in new curbs along that strip?
That was one of the things that you did ask for and that we were showing on our landscape plan. It didn't carry over to our site plan, but yes, we're putting new curbs there. There was a question as to whether we could provide a little bit more in terms of green space. What we're looking at is widening it a foot and then putting a curb on the inside. It would be a beveled granite curb to allow for the two-way traffic, but that rather than as the traffic, as the parking is now, toward Edgewood, that it would all be facing the building.
Okay. And there will still be the two curb cuts on Edgewood?
Correct.
Where do you unload your new cars now?
In the marked area on Edgewood. That is indicated as posted delivery zone. So that's what's shown in this light green right there.
Okay.
And similar to what had been done at the neighboring property at Mercedes, would you be willing to have a condition on this property with the service doors that are at the rear there, that they be closed at all times except for the actual entry and exiting of vehicles? That they be shielded so that the lighting concerns at night would be eliminated, and that there be no, I don't believe there's a car wash proposed in this one, right?
No, these would just be detailing and prep bays for car delivery.
Right.
Short answer is yes. These service bays are both heated and air-conditioned, so the
You want them
doors
to
will
be
be kept closed. And lights would be turned off. We did submit a letter to staff indicating that hours of operation are 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and that all site lighting, except for lighting required for safety purposes, would be off by 7 p.m.
What are the hours?
And to the point of noise, so that deals with the noise within that bay area. But the car lifts, what's the noise situation with those lifts?
We went through that when we were discussing, when we had the approval for the car lifts at the Audi sales parking garage. And Dan, do you want to address that? Because there's really not any noise associated with them.
Would you agree to a condition then that they also not be used or turned on or whatever outside of those hours that you just mentioned?
Yes, because the dealership closes at that
down.
time. Yes.
Okay.
All operations
Yeah.
on the site are within this schedule of hours that they've given us.
Right, and then when you did the mechanical, the systems on the roof, when you were looking at the noise for each of those mechanical systems, was that based on the combined noise of all four of those units, or just, was each one done individually?
We were doing them each individually for sound attenuation.
And okay, so then theoretically, each of them, when they're combined, should still comply?
I would hope so.
I would hope so. Right. Okay. And all service and drop-off is done at the 100 West Putnam Avenue site?
Service? No,
Or
here.
Service.
No.
Here.
Service drop-off.
There.
I think we had gone, 60% of the cars which Porsche services are picked up at
60,
customers' homes.
You didn't know that?
Oh, that's right, and then yes.
And brought back to their homes. So those won't come here at all.
Right. And then
The
it's
people who
other-
want to drop their car off themselves will park it here. It will then be taken by valet over to 180, and then brought back here for pickup by a customer.
And the ones that picked up at the home are just taken directly over?
They will never come here.
Right.
They'll just be at the
home.
service building, which also was approved by ARC last week.
Yep.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Raymer.
I have a few things. This
Mike, baby.
letter, today's letter, I guess. Except lighting required for safety purposes, can you specify what that is? Because I don't know what, that could be anything, if you,
You're required to have a light over a doorway in order, as an,
okay?
since we brought our architect with us, maybe
I have a
we should have
memory
him respond
of
to this.
neighbors.
This is John Penny, our architect for the project.
Yeah, all of the site lighting will be turned off. There may be one light on there just for safety purposes, and then there's emergency lighting inside the building,
Yes,
which accounts for about 5% of the light.
okay,
It has to stay on for code reasons.
sure, okay, but that's it.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Penny, quick question. Looking at the photographs that were submitted, there seems to be an awful lot of lighting on the building. Actually, even seems there's some fixtures on the Edgewood Street side. That's not part of the safety lighting, is that?
No, those lights will be turned off as well.
There's 3 lights on Edgewood.
The building-mounted
Pole
lights
lights.
along Edgewood.
Yes.
Building-mounted lights along Edgewood will be turned off.
Okay. Did ARC take a look at the lighting
Yes,
plan
they
that's
did.
required?
It says, for an exterior, it says to add composite panels to the parapet, install landscaping and lighting, and they approved it as submitted.
Actually, we brought one of the lighting fixtures with us to the ARC meeting and plugged it in. It was
No
very
kidding.
illuminating.
Oh, come on!
Well, since Fred isn't here anymore, somebody has to do
a lot, don't you?
We never thought people were going to miss his puns. Other things maybe, but the puns.
Because the concern that ARC had was that this type of fixture didn't have a shield on it, and that there would be some kind of glare. And the LED...
They're LED?
They're LED lights, and they can angle the diodes in a particular direction. You could see on the floor, actually, I still have it in the car if you want us to come plug it in, but you could see where the light pattern was and that it would focus on the parking lot and not off-site.
Okay.
And
Anything
it did
else?
meet
Anything else, guys?
the lighting
Anything from the
requirements.
public?
Yes, hold on, Donald. Nancy. Nancy.
There's a series of 2006 site plan and then a court agreement, 2009 extension, 2012 extension. And my question is this a new application, or is this, in your view, related to the?
This is a new application which incorporates the lifts, which we had as part of the court settlement in 2006, which we've been continuing. This really is just a facade change and a reconfiguration of the interior of the building. There's no change in terms of it being a service and sales building. It's just that the focus is more now on sales than service. And that's why we're bringing it in as another site plan special permit, but we're incorporating the prior one, which included the lifts.
Well, I understand that you want lifts, but what about all the rest of that 2006? And that, you're talking about the stipulation that was, that's what I'm trying to, I like, it looks very messy. This whole history is a little messy, and I want just to have some clarity about what is being asked for tonight as, and what does it incorporate from history, so that what is incorporated from history is limited. Because previous applications have had various.
No, I think that this one stands on its own, including all of the items that were, some of which were part of the 2006. There were also stipulations in terms of lighting, which we're addressing with this application. In terms of noise, which we're also addressing with this application. So I think many of the issues that were brought up then are dealt with completely here. But this is a new application, and what I hope is going to be a new approval, which will supersede what was approved back in 2006 as part of the settlement.
I like supersede.
You like the word supersede?
Yes, I do. Just, yes.
It's better than the word rescind,
Yes.
Which we used earlier.
Recession, what was the other word you were using?
Rescission.
I like that one.
I think our.
Not in this context, though.
Our staff recommendation is that our decision incorporate a statement that that there's a change in the use to be primarily sales. Do you have any objection to that?
Well, it has both sales and service. We're maintaining 5 service bays here.
Yeah.
So
It's still primarily sales, is it?
I think it's a greater focus on sales, but it's still sales and service just as it is now.
Okay.
I don't think I'd characterize it quite that way.
Okay, and the parking, have we resolved the parking?
Yes, that was part of what we came back
I
with.
think it was when you incorporate the other site, 180 and 241, the parking issues have been, I believe, addressed.
Well, that was raised in our staff report, and
Where was it raised?
in several places. I mean, specifically 553.
What?
Page.
At page 553.
Where?
At the bottom,
Oh, okay.
parking.
Gotcha.
I think what the staff was doing was taking in 552, issues to be considered and recommendations, and going through and indicating how we handled all of those in terms of, and it included the parking issues, particularly in.
One has more than enough parking and the other has less than enough parking. So.
And we had gone through and talked about how the service bays are utilized at 180, and that we would have some of that availability for customer parking on this site, which is well over-parked, and that the two would work together.
Mr. Hagney, over the years, the stackable parking has never actually occurred. So there are 39 spaces that don't exist, and so.
It's actually 30.
26.
30.
Oh, well,
Well,
because.
it's now 26,
the ground,
yes.
The ground
The
is
ground, we don't lose the
111.3.
ground.
Yeah, okay.
Those spaces exist today.
So that's concerning to me, that we have parking counts and they include stackable parking that was first stipulated to in 2006, and it's now 2015, and it's still not there, so. What do we do about?
Even if we don't put the stackable parking in, we're required to have at 241, 51 parking spaces, and without the stackable units, we have 71.
So here's my question. So I have brought up the situation of counting the stackable units towards the totals, and whether or not you're going to do that. I also have a question about whether or not you should be allowed to count the service bays themselves as one parking space, as well as room within the showroom. I didn't feel as if those necessarily were applicable to a site plan.
The precedent was how we handled it at Mercedes-Benz, where we counted cars in the showroom and cars on service bays, because that actually is a parking space where the car is being serviced. And that's how we handled it in the past.
No, but it's true. I recall that very specifically, that was done at Mercedes.
The regulations don't read as such.
I know they don't, but it has been interpreted by the commission in the past that is the way it's counted.
Okay.
Whether right or wrong, it's what we've done, so to be consistent.
It makes sense, it's typically the service bay is occupied.
Well, that.
Okay. So
I
based
agree
on,
with Bob.
not on the regulation, but on what we've done in the past.
Well, it's an interpretation, and the commission is allowed to do that.
Okay. The beta report says there should be one-way traffic. Just mentioning.
Basically, it is one-way traffic, except for the curious thing that you sometimes have to get because you have to back in. The way they've chosen to do it is they're backing into those spaces. This is all out of sight. This is all away from customers.
Yes.
So what they're doing is that if you drove in, normally the one-way circulation would go around, but because of the way they've done it, when they bring the cars, I don't know how they're going to do it, but to get into those few spaces, I mean, there's about 10 spaces which are against the property line. We talked about this with them the last time they were here, whether they should be angled this way or that way. And they've elected to angle it this way because that's the way, because that's all going to be handled by them within their servicing.
Right.
Therefore, you do get a funny little two-way traffic up there, and you do get two-way traffic along the, where the
Never
cars
done
are
by
being
the
parked
public.
on Edgewood.
Which is the important
On
thing.
on the Edgewood side where the public is, right?
Yeah,
It's going to
but
be
that's two-way.
two-way.
Yeah.
But Beta
It's on
says it should
Edgewood.
be one-way. I'm just pointing out, our expert says not, so.
Well, I don't know why they would object to it being one way. I mean, two ways.
That's the
They've got enough room.
recommendation.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
You have the room for two-way.
You have
so what-
two-way,
So
so-
I don't understand what the problem.
It's not my problem, it's Beta's problem, so
It's,
Beta's problem.
There's no problem.
it doesn't, how did it read, Nancy? I'm trying to find it.
it's on page 587.
Well, I'm looking at their, okay, except, which will be converted from a full-service driveway to an entrance-only driveway and one-way clockwise circulation throughout the site. The problem was that at one time, the landscape drawing was showing one kind of circulation, and the site plan was doing something else. Beta, obviously, when they did this back in June, had the old plans. So I don't see any reason where it concerns how they're going to operate it. Whether they have, however they want to do it, that's their choice. But on Edgewood, where it's going to be available to the public, I don't see the problem of having two-way circulation there. I don't see, notwithstanding what they've said.
What they said, fine.
And it services as two-way traffic now.
I know, but I'm just saying that, but, I mean, I think we do have to take into consideration what Beta said. I'm just saying that I think they looked at old plans, and they may have at that point said it should be all one way, but clearly it's not going to be.
No.
Because they're electing to operate the site differently. It's just like we're accepting standards. I mean, if we approve this, we're accepting standards for parking which don't exist anywhere. They don't exist over on 180 if we decide to act on it. But it's always been considered that where it's under the control of service personnel, then the tandem parking and things like that have been acceptable, especially in automobile dealerships.
There was one thing that
glad you raised
my
it,
client wanted me to bring up, because he wasn't able to be here, and it was a question as to whether New Country Motor Car Group was a good corporate citizen in Greenwich. And he provided me with a list of all the contributions over the last 2 years that they have made, very significant ones to Kids in Crisis, Autism Speaks, the Greenwich Dolphins, the Firefighters Association, YMCA, clubs at the high school, the hospital, Child Guidance Center, and they contribute to other worthy organizations in the Fairfield County area. And I just wanted to bring up that they do make a significant
Are
contribution
you
to
going
the
to
community.
give that to staff?
Yes, I will provide this to staff.
Good idea. Good for you. Okay, are we okay? Okay, well, anything from the public? Okay, we close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is final site plan and special permit, 701 West Putnam Avenue.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Christopher Bristol, representing the property owner and applicant, Frank J. O'Brien, II trustee. We had a few things to clean up from the last go-around, and I think actually we've pretty much addressed them all. Just to start sort of going over some of them, there was an outstanding bill from the Highway Department for work that they had to complete on behalf of the prior owner, which we paid. We have satisfied the landscaping condition that was part of the prior site plan. We've submitted an as-built, and staff confirmed that that was all done. We provided a more detailed floor plan, which gave in particular more description of the use of the backhaul. So we did that. We had submitted a letter from the business operator that should be in your files from yesterday, I believe, that outlines the details of the business operations, the class times and sizes and schedules and whatnot. So we had submitted that. We had a traffic report, most notably, that confirmed that there was no adverse impact in the traffic. The traffic situation, in particular at the lights in the intersection with West Putnam Avenue, when compared to the previous use, or existing use, I should say, of offices. I think that's it. I'm happy to discuss anything else.
So you did agree to adjust the survey so that it shows just the one.
Yeah, the reason why I had so many questions, because I thought there was a dispute as to the property actually being merged, when that wasn't the case. We had satisfied that. And here is just a copy of the survey that we had filed on the land records that merged the property. We had
Right, and that shows former lot line.
Exactly, and I think
owner.
in particular was this piece here. For some reason, we didn't represent the purchaser, or the previous owner, when he purchased the property, but it was checkerboarded, so that was, one entity was here and a different entity was here, so we had since merged them. It's all under one ownership, obviously, and it's now singly owned.
So prior to zoning permit, you presumably have no problem with showing that it has it all as one
No problem.
property? Okay.
No problem at all.
We have one comment, I think, from Beta regarding the sight lines coming out of the property.
Yes.
And there's something about a rock outcropping.
Let me see if I can
find that.
Here's the as-built, which doesn't really show it. The rock outcropping, there's some boulders there, but I think the rock...
There's a
Had to be at
photograph
the
in your
drive.
package, it looks like this, that Ms. Tominski had provided you.
There you go.
It shows the rock outcropping, should be in your folders.
No.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I will pass it on down to you then.
Because the other thing is, we have DPW saying the traffic survey is okay, and they were dealing with Adler.
Right, and I think the point that DPW is stating is that when you have an existing driveway, and I think that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, when you have an existing driveway that is not proposed to be relocated or any, and that only at a time when you were proposing to relocate a driveway would you be required to do something like remove a rock outcropping?
Yeah, I guess. If you look at the...
Because it doesn't seem like much of a rock outcropping for
Right.
sightlines as it is.
Right, and the other point of it is that there's an awful lot of landscaping there that if removed would really change the look
Yes,
of...
and we weren't sure if there was part of the rock that was actually on the town property, because it's kind of an odd line over there. So there's that, and if you actually look in the reports, it says, the sightlines are 150 feet one way, and the other side's 150, but could be increased to 180. I'm arguing that 150 feet should be sufficient, given the existing situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I lost it. I knew I had
Other comments? Anybody else?
Yes. Yeah.
Please.
A comment we discussed yesterday at our meeting,
Yes.
Mr. McRae pointed out the other uses and buildings in the area. So there's a heavily used deli. There is a daycare facility.
Yes.
And a cleaner. Is that right, that they're all in the immediate area?
Yes,
familiar?
they're all over on this side over here. There's the deli, and the dry cleaner, I think, is next door, and the daycare is, I believe, is accessed over in the back there.
And
Sorry?
so, the obvious difference between this proposed use and the other, it was that was, from our page 631, it says the most recent use was an office use. And so that presumes that people arrived for a normal workday and left at the end of it, and would not have the same kind of traffic movement. So in this case, you're going to have 14 people coming in at 9, in time for a 9 o'clock. Excuse me, it's a 9:30 class. So those are the times that concern me most, a 9:30 class, a noon class, and 6 p.m. These are very high traffic times on the post road to begin with.
Yes.
And so if you have a group of people arriving all simultaneously in bunches like that, I suspect it will have an impact on what the traffic situation is like at those times. And it's quite different from an office.
I guess I would respond a couple ways to that. First of all, if you look in Adler's traffic report, it does mention other uses that are in the area as well. So it seems to have taken that into account and confirms in the report that there's no change in the level of service at the nearby intersection light. And also that I just wanted to point out again, as far as scheduling goes, and we have that in the operator's letter.
There's 30 minutes between.
We're staggering classes by 30 minutes to allow proper
Certainly
ingress.
a help. Am I correct that this is going to be only one class at a time? It's a very large floor space.
I mean,
So am I right that there will be only one class at a time?
there's only going to be one class at a time, correct?
Okay,
I
so
mean,
if we have that as a condition, that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Again, and that's all that was contemplated anyway. As you can
Okay.
see, I think everyone's familiar with the building. It was an old garage, so it's a single floor, sort of no basement, no upper
Right.
floor. So it's very kind of sort of working with the existing box.
Okay, I think, and the parking was okay, I think. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments from the public? Okay, thank you. We close. Okay.
We're done.
Let's get started.
So.
Well, let's do the, let's
We
do,
can limit it to the 14 that's.
let's do the minutes quickly. Somebody.
Okay, I'd like to
approval
move
minutes.
approval, I'd like to move approval of the minutes for June 30th and July 7th.
Second. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, you
Let's
got a
go now.
second. He can't second.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, yeah.
No, Peter did it.
Peter did it.
I was keeping quiet. Somebody would
Okay.
speak up.
Let's start off with River Road, number 4.
Okay, River Road number 4, was that the first one we had? I guess so, Donald's on top of it, okay. I have notes,
Oh, yes.
we have many notes.
What do you got on this?
I got to get it first.
All right. You're just getting your act together.
I'm getting to the bottom of the pile.
Oh, I just found my letter, or is that?
Okay,
This was a,
phase 1.
Okay, thank you.
this is a coastal site plan, I think, where the applicant is seeking to modify some of the uses on the site. To number one, include rowing as a part of the site. Number 2, to eliminate the retail use. Number 3, to eliminate the residential use. Number 4, to not put into operation until a subsequent phase any of the existing docks which are currently on the site. The only dock which will be used is the rowing dock.
No action on the building, office building.
No.
Richard, just to add to that, yes, but the office will be for water-dependent use. It will continue as an office, but it will be for water-dependent use. For the rowing club. And
All right,
so,
well, I was taking the uses out first that were going out, then we'll just.
Okay, sorry.
The one remaining building on the site will then be, remain as office, office and storage, I think. But it will be for the rowing club use only and not leased to a third party.
so it's in support of water-dependent activities.
Yes. They agreed to withdraw, is that the word we finally ended up with? Rescind, thank you, their earlier approvals on the site. They will provide an easement for the boardwalk. They will demarcate the limits of that easement, and they'll put up signs regarding access to the easement in the layout of the boardwalk from the previous site plan. I think, what was it, a 10-foot Katie?
Yeah.
10 foot?
10 foot. I think
Okay.
it was 10 foot, yeah.
And they will sign that,
6 foot. 6 foot.
so it was a 6-foot.
And which I think is coincident, I think that's coincident with what Brunswick has next
Okay.
door. And so that would be in keeping with what's in the area, the 6 foot.
Good. They will, they will demarcate the parking spaces.
And they will do that before they will submit a dimensioned parking plan prior to any operation for review by P&Z staff, right?
Including the aisle width.
Yep,
Yep.
prior to any operation. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
I told you I was going to
No,
say that.
I'm not done. They will submit a consolidation map of the 3 parcels.
Which are going to be one tax lot, one zoning. Oh, no, sorry.
that's
Yeah,
another
consolidation.
project.
Yep, sorry, wrong one.
The rowing boats will be removed and stored off-site during the winter, and the only storage on-site will, I believe, be the, what they call the coaches launches. Is that the correct term, Katie?
Yes, coaches
Okay.
launches, yeah.
How about the existing docks? Do you need to say anything?
I said the existing docks will remain, but they will not be used. In other
Okay.
words, they agreed to, for this phase anyway.
And how about the retail use?
And
It's
they-
gone.
And they won't rent out the slips.
And just for the purpose
No,
of
I'm talking
the
about the,
legal notice,
Wait, we're getting there. Yeah, we're going to say it. Just hold on, we are going to do that.
We are?
Mr. Maitland, when you were talking about the consolidation of those 3 lots, just for the purpose of the legal notice, you were talking about 89, 137, and 143 River
Yes,
Road.
correct.
Thank you.
Just a second, just let me finish my, just one other note that the DEP approval was received. A copy is going to be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office. This received today.
Right, one was actually received.
There will be
Is
no
it-
new grading, at least in this phase of the site and the parking. Like I said, there'll be no new grading of the site. And I think that's it.
Okay, I got
Say
2
anything
more
about the
things.
timeline for-
Hold on, and I got 2 more things. The driveway configuration is going to have the southern driveway as inbound with
No.
one-way, yes,
Southern driveway is out.
No, they're going to use it inbound.
No,
They're not.
Southern, I'm sorry, I got messed up.
They're going to be inbound, that's my walk. They're going to be inbound on the southern driveway and outbound on the northern driveway, and it's going to be one-way circulation around the lot. We said no commercial boat storage. Should we mention the porta potties?
I think that's when they do a building permit. I don't think that's a zoning issue.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
Uses. Yeah, we were talking about the retail.
Okay.
And because they did have a note about porous pavement, but that's for a later situation, right? And you'd mentioned that there's no site work
No
in
site
that
work.
sense, so there's no need for DPW
With one exception,
review.
they are going to paint, they're going to, in some way, show, strike
Delineate the parking
something, yeah,
spaces,
delineate
right.
the parking spaces.
And I guess that we would say that for this first phase, that the Sandy's fruit stand will remain operational.
Okay.
And
Hey, guys.
consistent with hold on a second, consistent with, as an ancillary use, consistent with the requirements of the WB zone, to be reviewed again reviewed at phase 2.
That's with all the other.
When they submit the parking, they gotta have the easement for
The public access easement, we said.
Yeah, I said
Okay.
that.
I think,
Okay, I think we've covered it all.
okay, let's go. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Millbank.
I think the applicant indicated that the stairway from the garage to the site was missing, And they did include it, however, they said within their calculations for FAR and site coverage, but those will have to be confirmed by the ZEO. They have reduced the bulkhead of the elevator. They did say they would look at reducing by a couple of, well, they would look at reducing the height of the stair tower enclosure. They did indicate that that a stairway is being added from Millbank to the upper part of the site to the site that is the roof of the garage at the request of ARC. ARC approved the plans of the building and the site work, lighting, I assume. They did, okay, that's it. Other than that, the staff comments and.
Okay, second, please.
Second. Hold on a second.
Yes,
said one
okay,
thing.
well, I did say they were going, I thought I said they were going to do it, but maybe I didn't. But they are going to go to one zoning lot.
One zoning lot and
One tax lot, yes.
Okay, just making sure we said it.
That's it.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I guess I should be seconding, but I'm-
Okay, Club Road.
They're gonna save the trees. save
No,
the one
one tree, that's it.
And they're gonna save the one tree.
Yeah.
There's nothing, we weren't able to do anything with the grading. And they're gonna give us the deed.
What do you got on Club Road?
We're coming. We're working
There were
on it.
just some tops and bottoms of walls missing from the plans, but I know that Jody would pick it up.
Respond to the ZEO had comments and respond to those. And I don't know where oh, here it is, sorry.
What do you got, what do you got?
She's talking right now.
Okay, so I'm coming, I'm sorry, I've just got to look this up. On Club Road, the other thing is, per the ZEO comments, that the trusses have to be done right. Is anybody with me here?
Yes,
No.
sorry.
Okay, that the trusses have to be done right, and also the grade, that patio wall that he commented on, and other departmental comments, and sewer was okay, as I remember on this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was one problem with the lateral.
The only thing, I don't know if there's anything that we should say on this one about the discharge, that there's a coordinated drainage solution to this particular site, that the discharge is being picked up on an adjacent site.
Well, I'm
How do we-
making the assumption Scott Marucci should just verify that when they submitted.
I did speak briefly with Scott today about that. He said, yeah, he didn't have any issue with it. He had asked them to move back the one at the back of the property that you pointed out earlier. He did get them to move it to that 10-foot mark where it's at right now, because that's all that's required.
Okay.
And he talked about the front one that you had discussed with me before. And he said that one, it's just following the old patterns, which is to discharge to the street, so he was happy with that as well.
Okay.
It's worth mentioning.
Maybe just as a put a couple of whereases in there on that drainage is, he explained that it's being picked up, and acknowledging that drainage is being picked up on the neighbor's property to the east.
Yeah.
I got it right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
But maybe just as a whereas, because I don't think there's any condition or anything to it.
No, okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, second, somebody?
Can you address the sewer
Second.
comments?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Do you want to?
Old Church Road.
Do you want to skip that? or go-
Because you want to
wants
go,
us to
you
do
want to go
Greenwich
home, don't you?
Country
So
Day.
let's.
I don't care.
But
just-
it's like back and forth, though.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let's-
we'll do,
let's
we'll
do-
we'll
This
do
is-
those for you.
I don't mind skipping, but this, because to me, this is very simple.
Yeah, but he can't be he's not supposed to be with us when we
That's
do
right.
this.
So let's just
So
do
let's
the
go
other
to
one.
county-
Right. Be nice to him.
Why don't you just stand up or something? I'm not going to worry about it.
That's
No.
not, how about I don't look
Well-
at the commission?
Can't we just,
Close your eyes.
do the other ones?
Why
and-
can't we do the other one
Why don't we
first?
just
Okay,
do
well-
the other ones? Hold
all
on,
right.
Andy. We're going to do the other ones.
All right, because I want to talk to him for a minute. Don't, all right, we'll do 9.
We'll be quick.
241 West Putnam.
Okay.
Now, I've lost the hours again. I can't believe how many times I've lost that one with the hours.
All right, I would move the approval of the final site plan and special permit incorporating the following. The letter of July 21st outlining the, number 1, where the delivery is going to be dropped off, and number 2, the hours of operation, and number 3, the lighting will be shut off at 7 PM daily. So that letter should be incorporated for the hours and days of operation of the facility and where the cars are going to be discharged.
The doors in the back.
I know, I'll get to them.
Okay.
The north doors are to be closed at all times except for the normal opening and opening to allow a car in or a car out. Other than that, they will remain closed. ARC approved the design and the signs and the lighting at the 7:15 meeting. They will stripe the spaces for the delivery or at the service at the service entrance at this building. There should be a 16-foot space, a 16-foot aisle, and a 16-foot space, since it is one-way traffic. The strip of land at the Edgewood, which is currently shown as lawn, will be they will add to it approximately a foot. They will put in new curbs along Elmwood. They will put in a curb on the travel side of the, where the parking is, on both sides of that little island. And
This plan supersedes the old plan that was submitted? That's the word he used, supersedes.
we have to be careful because the old plan that is submitted still was a part of a court settlement with that,
Well, we can say, whereas the applicant represented that this plan incorporates.
Do you really have to get into that, Margarita? Do you have to get into it? What's the value?
You know, the value is just that when someone comes along 3 years from now and doesn't remember what we did, it's in the letter. That's why we're careful with the letters. Because that's what people use to know what we were thinking at the
Well,
time.
I agree, but
So
why would you?
Why don't we just let you guys figure out, can we do that? Let you guys figure out how you word what, because it was you guys, somebody wanted it clear. And what it had to do, because there's a court stipulation on this.
yeah.
So it's just to be clear relative to the court stipulation in the future.
Because the other part of the site plans and so forth that I don't think we want,
Well,
they're not
there-
rescinded because that was, one of them was for the canopy at the service.
And the stacking of the
And,
parking and the.
Well, but that's,
No.
I think you got to be very careful when you get into
Right, we
there
have to
is
be
a
very
note.
careful because there's a court stipulation on this and we want to make sure we lay the record.
In the stipulation, it states, any future additions, improvements, or alterations to the site will be subject to further review by the commission in accordance with the zoning regulations in effect at the time of the proposed addition or improvement.
right, and that's what we're doing.
So that's what they're doing now.
Yeah.
So I think we can just say
Okay.
that. Just put that
Okay.
in for the court stipulation,
That's
blah, blah,
good.
blah. Okay. And
Okay.
then the ARC
What else you got
conditions,
here?
consistent, whatever.
Do you have anything else on this?
Incorporate the conditions of the ARC review.
I already said.
Okay, second.
Any other staff comments, right?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Last.
Oh, not last, we got more to go. Do you want to do 180 now?
No, let's do 701. The last one. And we'll come back to
No, we got to do, well,
Then
we
we'll come
have
back.
tonight to deal with 180 West Putnam, which was the service facility that we closed a month ago and didn't
Yeah.
deal with it.
They made a note of
So I
that.
guess we can do that if you want to go to, and let some people go home, we want to go to 701 West
Let's do
Putnam.
701.
All right. I would move the approval of the site plan, final site plan special permit, incorporating the owner's letter of, yikes, I don't have the date.
July 20th.
July 20th regarding the hours of operation, the separation of 30 minutes between classes, the no retail use, but incorporate the letter in its entirety.
With no more than 14 students.
And there will only be one class
Right.
at a time, and that the application for 6141 to change from an office to the yoga studio is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use. And
The corrected survey.
okay.
The corrected survey, okay.
Anything
Okay.
else? I don't have anything
All the
else.
conditions, all the stuff that's in the letter, in her letter.
Yeah,
I
he
already
mentioned
said
that.
Right.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go to 7,
Okay, bye, Andy.
Greenwich Country Day.
Oh, what,
Are you gonna
just a
do
second.
180?
Are you on 180?
I just asked
Oh.
the question.
Okay. No, I don't know if you're,
Well, I don't know
Hold
what
on, I'm gonna
happened
tell
with Fred.
you. 180, it doesn't say.
yeah, well, let's see. It's
It
not
was
listed
Fred,
in
and
it.
you know, that means you're gonna have to
I
read
think you're
the-
going to have to sit on it.
But he's gotta have to,
He was here at the
I
meeting.
was here
here.
at the meeting.
Yeah.
I participated. I told him to put the lifts over at 180.
Okay.
Well, let's do,
So 180.
let's do Country Day, well, he's still here.
He's still here because we want him and then he's going to leave.
Okay.
So we're going to do 180 West Putnam Avenue. That's the service facility that we closed about a month ago, and now we're going to deal with it. Number 1, I would move the approval of the final site plan and special permit. With the statement, number 1, there was a comment that the lighting on the site and at some points exceeded the .5 at the property line, and that needs to be corrected. And if the site lighting at the back of the site where it's against, I think it's against residential land, it would have to be a .1. So the lighting needs to meet the regulations in 6150, good Lord, I've forgotten it already. 2 and,
2 and 3, or?
well, no, it's 2 because it's business zones, so it has to meet that. The parking space is a tandem parking, all of that is since there will be no customers coming to this site, all of the parking standards are being done by service personnel only. We did get ARC approval of this. And I think that when you count the number of spaces that are required on the 2 sites for parking, my notes say that we need to have 124 are required, taking both sites together, and 128 without the stacking units are being provided. So there's more parking being provided than is required, and will even go more than with the stacking units. That's it.
I just wanted to, for the photometrics, they should do an as-built
Great,
for this.
great.
CO.
Okay. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, why did I put-
Okay, now,
I'm not listening.
Yeah, almost.
let's do Greenwich Country Day, first one. The re-subdivision.
Well, in my mind, there is no re-subdivision on this site. I believe that the amount of land being transferred does not rise to the level of a re-subdivision submission. And therefore, I don't believe that a subdivision has occurred, since there are no new lots being created. And there are 4 tests on re-subdivision, and I don't believe any of those 4 tests fail. So in my mind, it's not a material diminishment of the lot,
And the septic is moot because it's on town sewer. And there's the other two tests, I can't remember what they are, but this does not violate that. So I would move that this is neither a subdivision nor a re-subdivision. And there are findings. Just note that IWWA and ZBA have made findings on this. And that's it.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. To the site plan and special permit, I would move the approval of the final site plan and special permit with the, basically just incorporating any of the recommendations of staff that are outstanding, and that the, see if I got this right now, there will be a simultaneous execution of documents transferring the land from the previous application to the main site, simultaneous with the issue of with the application for a zoning permit. Okay? That's it then.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're good. Nick, you want to mention anything?
I think we should. I'm thinking it would be good for
Talk to your friends at ARC.
She can stay here if she wants to.
Because they weren't given the same
Well, I think if we
information
ask
we
her,
were
she'll
given.
do it.
You know, so.
She chooses to leave, it's her
Leave
choice.
them with the impression that
But I
we
don't think,
overrided you.
she realized
That wasn't the case.
No, she knows she can stay.
no,
I
no.
think it's important that we
she-
show
The
respect.
day we asked her to make a motion, she said,
Okay,
to do it.
all right,
So
guys.
She's gotta be, because you never know.
Second it.
I mean, like,